Let me introduce you to one of the proud supporters of From the Hawkeye of the Storm, Iowa floor covering down in Bondurant. Now, for the last year and a half, you've heard me talk about this great company in the heart of central Iowa. They've got their tough core click together, 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring, great for you DIYers out there. But even if you're just a contractor or you need a different type of flooring, they've got you covered, whether it be tile showers, carpet. Give Iowa Floor Covering a chance to serve you better and serve your flooring needs. Visit them online at iowafloorcovering.com. That's iowafloorcovering.com, or you can give them a call at 515-379-7000. That's 515-379-7000. Thank you to Iowa Floor Covering in Bondurant. Authentic, original player artwork available for Hawkeye fans across the country. Now, in addition to the classic sign prints of Hawkeye greats like Chuck Long, Torrey Taylor, and Cooper DeJean, more authentic prints are coming, including current Iowa football stars Cade McNamara, Luke Lachey, and Xavier Wampa. There are so many options available. They make great gifts. Plus, your purchase benefits the athletes themselves and your favorite Hawkeye program from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Visit Under the Kitchen on Facebook, visit the stand each year at Fry Fest, or check out their website, underthekitchen.square.site. Again, that's underthekitchen.square.site. Check out Under the Kitchen today and get your authentic, original Hawkeye print. We may have to adjust that ad with our good friend Randy Engel down at Under the Kitchen. Cade McNamara now in the portal. The signing period is now open, and all of Iowa's recruits, all of Iowa's 2025 commits have officially pledged via their national letter of intent. And we're here to talk about the recruiting class that is, the transfer portal class that potentially could be, and some potential for guys that are going to be departing, including Cade McNamara, who has formally announced his departure from Iowa football. Of course, this is our annual National Signing Day preview show. If you're new to the show, please be sure to hit the, excuse me, man, I got a frog in my throat to get things started here. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button. It does help us in the algorithm. If you're new to the show, you can also be sure to subscribe, turn notifications on, click that little bell. That does help as well. And if you're interested in calling in, the number to call in is 515-635-1601, or you can join via StreamYard. And I know we got a couple of people already who want to chat, but we are going to open things up with a very special guest and a member of our 2025 recruiting class, and that is Mr. Brad Fitzgibbon, who is with us. Brad, good to see you, sir.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Well, first of all, welcome to the class. I think that's probably the better welcome that we can give you. Welcome to the Swarm. I know you've probably heard that a few times here today, and this day is, I'm sure you've been anxiously awaiting the day where you could officially make this a thing, and you are officially a Hawkeye. So how does it feel now that your name is on the dotted line, so to speak?
It's been a dream of mine to, always sign that letter and, be a, Division I athlete. And I think it's even better that I'm going to be at Iowa. And as much as I enjoyed the recruiting process and, the attention that, sometimes it brings, it was a relief to, finally call a place home, for certain. So, I'm really excited to, be able to put pen to paper on that.
Talk a little bit about your upbringing. For people that don't know, Marist has been a very rich football school, but obviously the Chicago area, Iowa's been very involved there for a long time. Tell us what it's like to grow up in that area.
Yeah, so, I'm originally from New Lenox, so I was, more of a suburbs guy, but, picking Marist was, definitely one of the greatest decisions of my life. And, Marist is a big funnel for Iowa people, and, it's not only football as well as, just normal students that go there. So, the culture that was at Marist, I saw when I was on my visit, the culture at Iowa was very similar too. And, guys like John Nestor, teammates I've played with and, guys I'm able to, see on these visits, it was something that was, it was really nice to see, having, the familiarity, even though it's a bigger school and, you don't know everybody, and I still don't know everyone at Marist, but just having someone that has been through it and thrives in it, it's really nice to have. So I think Marist has prepared me for this, and I think that having this sort of challenge, but also having the sort of, being familiar with a lot of people going is, going to be really awesome for me.
Tell us a little bit about the recruiting process for you, because as if people don't know, you mentioned it already, but you do have a history with one guy in particular, and that's John Nestor. I'm guessing he was a factor in, just maybe the familiarity with the program and getting to know Coach Bell and Coach Ferentz, Coach Parker. But can you talk about that process and how much of an influence was John?
Yeah, so a lot of the schools I visited didn't have, a Maris. It's really hard to find a guy that, played football with you and went to, school you're going to visit to. So, I did have guys at Wisconsin. I had, Jamel Howard I played next to. So, he was one of the guys I was, able to bond with when I was there. But, the big factor in the recruiting and why I was able to choose Iowa wasn't necessarily that John was here, more or less that knowing somebody that had the same experience that I did, and maybe even a worse experience or maybe even better experience, it was just someone that I could look to see, where they, wish they could have done or what they could have done. And, having a guy I could talk to, having a guy I've played with, and, having that, bond as brothers definitely, helped a lot in choosing Iowa. And I feel like he was able to, talk to me on a more of a friend level rather than a, recruiting level. He was, very honest with me and, very upfront. And I think that was, a huge factor in why I chose Iowa.
I don't want to pit Big Ten schools against one another, but of course there's a number of schools that were in on you and offered that have went through some pretty significant coaching changes. I think about Wisconsin. There's been some, obviously they've struggled since Luke Fickell came aboard. Obviously Jonathan Smith at Michigan State. Those are a couple of schools that were heavily involved with you. It was the familiarity and the stability of Kirk and his staff, longest tenured coach in the FBS. Was that a factor in this?
I would say yes, but not to an extent of what you might think. Coaches come and go, and I know that, and that's college football is a business, and I'm fully aware of that. And Coach Bell and Coach Ferentz have made it very clear that college football is a business, and it's not what it used to be. It's not, you don't commit to, really a school anymore. You really commit to, playing the game for, the team. And coaches come and go. And honestly, I've learned that, you can't commit to a coach. You can't commit to, one singular guy that's going to be there, because you don't know if they're going to be there for, all 3, 4 years, 5 years, however long, I plan on staying. It's just really something that, I found that, it wasn't trustworthy. And, but with Iowa, you're able to trust the coaches. They've been there for a while, whether they plan on leaving next year or this year, it's not in my control. So, really it was, deciding on a school that had the culture and had the team and the guys I wanted to be around. And, it wasn't really about, the coaches or anything.
It kind of answers my next question, Brad, because my next question kind of piggybacks off what we heard from Kirk Ferentz earlier today during his signing day press conference, which is also an annual thing. And he addressed the talk that you're going to have when you're nearing 70 years old and you've been into school for over 2 decades. And that is, do you plan on returning next season? And his answer was, yeah, unless you know something I don't. So pretty clear he wants to be back. Was that a conversation at all during the process for you? And knowing that your career could span 4 to 5 years potentially and may outlive Kirk Ferentz's tenure, it doesn't sound like that was much of a factor in your decision-making.
Yeah, it was definitely a question that we brought up, having that sense of security and having that head coach. Because, with new head coach brings, a little bit of chaos, no matter, how good or how bad the coach's, resume is. So I feel like having a stable coaching staff and having, at least a little bit of reliability was, definitely a conversation I wanted to have and a conversation that we did have. And, as far as it affecting my recruiting, I don't think it did, as great of a number. But, it definitely helped knowing that, these guys want to be here, for each other, and they want to be, part of the Hawkeye family.
It sounds like Coach Wallace and Coach Bell are two guys that obviously you're going to be coached primarily by Coach Bell, but I know Seth was also involved in your recruitment. And I know for years of doing this show and talking to players at Media Day each and every year and asking them about their experience, even through the first few months of their young careers, everybody just raves about the early welcome that they got, not only before committing, but after committing, once they got enrolled at Iowa, from guys like Seth, from guys like Kelvin, how they embrace you like family, make you feel at home in Iowa. And of course, you're not going across the country like some guys in this class are. But was the family atmosphere as big as people make it out to be when you were on your visit?
Oh yeah, I think like I said, with similarity and familiarity with Marist, Marist got a great family feel. So having that same sense of family feel at Iowa made it 10 times better. And I feel like Coach Wallace is my is the area recruiter, so I was able to meet him first, and then when I got further along in my recruiting journey, I was able to meet Coach Bell. So having those two guys stop in and out of Marist and being able to conversate with them, like I wouldn't say it was like we were friends, but it was definitely like we were close, and it was a family, and it was all they were honest, and I was honest, and that's the main reason I was looking for in my recruiting is I want a coach to be honest with me, and I didn't want to I don't want to see the smoke and mirrors that some places show. I wanted the honest truth, and I wanted to know what can I do to get better, what can I do to improve myself as a player and as a person, and I think that the farthest the conversations took me were to Iowa, so I feel like having the ability to talk with the coaches was, definitely a great factor, and showing them, how I want to be honest, and, them reciprocating that was, it's huge.
On three showing you at 6'4", 280. Is that accurate? Those measurements accurate as of today?
Yeah, 6'3", 6'4". I mean, it floats around a little.
6'4" with shoes on. That's fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, positional flexibility, Iowa, Kelvin, another thing he and Coach Neiman always preach is, we don't have defensive ends and defensive tackles here. We have defensive linemen. They're just versatile, and they're going to play in different situations at different spots potentially. Can you talk about your positional flexibility and what do you bring to the line? Obviously, you bring size. There's not a lot of guys that are 280, right? Before they get to Iowa. That's got to give you an opportunity to get in the field earlier than most.
Yeah. So at Marist, we ran like a multiple front almost. So I was playing, everywhere from a 5 tech to a 0 tech. I played it, very evenly, mostly 2 and 5, like 2 tech and 5 tech. So, I have experience inside, outside, right over the ball. So I feel like that was a huge step, up in my intelligence. And I feel like that was, it's going to greatly impact how I'm able to, be flexible wherever I went. And especially at Iowa, where Coach Bell doesn't like to call them defensive ends or defensive tackles. You play the D line, so I feel like that's huge as being a recruit, being knowing I can play anywhere, but also going somewhere where they want me to play everywhere.
And although he's a DB's coach, and that's the pedigree of Phil Parker, what does it feel like to know you're going to be playing for a guy who's the reigning Broyles Coach of the Year?
I think it's a great honor, almost. To be able to, coach or play under like the greatest coaching legacy, it's just hard to, compete with that, honestly. And although he's not my position coach, he's definitely a defensive coach that I will be, talking to almost every day, if not, weekly. So I just feel like having someone like that with, I guess the resume of being like, a great coach it's an honor.
Absolutely. Brad, I want to ask you about your off-field interests, and I guess some of this goes into sports because I saw a question here from Isaac in the chat, wanted to know about your rooting interest. I'm guessing maybe you weren't a Hawkeye fan growing up. Is that fair?
So it's like a weird story on college football. I kind of just watched college football. I'm a Bears fan. Like I'm for sure a Bears fan as far as NFL goes.
That was my next question.
College football was just like watch the games, watch the big games, but I was always a Big Ten football guy. I knew that. My sister's at University of Illinois. She's a gymnast. So, you kind of feed into being a fan of her, but, also watching and, growing up around a lot of guys that, were Iowa fans. It was like, you got to watch the Big Ten. And I feel like my game almost evolved into being a Big Ten D lineman because I feel like, my strengths are more in the run defense rather than the pass defense. And I feel like that, that's where the Big Ten is, run the ball and stop the run. I feel like, a lot of guys want to watch the SEC, watch them throw it deep, but, I'm interested in, watching the big boys play.
I did not know that your sister competed at Illinois, and it happened to her response to your announcement yesterday. It popped across my news feed, and I saw she said, "Go Hawks." So I thought she's going out on a limb as an Illini fan.
Yeah, I know.
As an Illini athlete to go out on a limb and do that. So, and then there are examples. I mean, there's plenty. I think of Brock Harding and his connection to Illinois. I don't know if you kind of know Brock's story, but this is going to be an opportunity, I'm sure, for you to, you're moving to a different state, but you're also not far from home. I'm guessing your family is going to be able to be at most events, and I'm guessing they are able to attend your sister's events as well.
Yes, I think that's a huge part of picking all my schools, and especially being almost right in the middle of the Big Ten. It was almost like a field day, trying to find a school that I wanted to go to and that all my family could go to too, as well as not taking time away from my sister, who was also competing. So I feel like only being a 3-hour drive was super nice. It's just Saturdays. If they can't make every game, it's okay. But knowing that they can make at least a couple of them is it means a lot.
I am guessing that November 28th, Thanksgiving Day, which saw one of the strangest coaching blunders that I can remember in NFL history, and it involved your Chicago Bears. They have since made a coaching change. So let me first ask you this, Brad, and we'll kind of wrap up with this conversation on your beloved Bears. They make a coaching change. What were you doing in that moment as you see the clock running down? Was that just like was it your Bears fandom flashing before your eyes? Is this kind of like a microcosm of what you've had to deal with during your life?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but it's it's nothing new. I mean, you're kind of used to the head coach, being a little. I mean, sometimes it's the head coach, sometimes it's the players. Like, it's always been the Bears, though. I mean, except for that one year with Trubisky and then Cody Parkey doing it, whatever. And that was a good year. I always reminisce that year. I don't care if we lost to the Eagles or whatever, but I feel like as a Bears fan, obviously I'm not gonna go and switch up because my coach isn't the smartest, but I just remember standing at the kitchen table, both hands on my head, staring at the TV, and I'm like, wow, it's a great day to be a Bears fan.
Well, you've been, at least the bright side of all this, Brad, is you've been able to see a really good punter who happened to have played at Iowa. So I'm sure you're a huge Tory Taylor fan. Is that fair?
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, it's
well,
Bears punt a lot, so you get to watch Tory Taylor a lot, which is awesome. So I got that Iowa Bears connection.
Yeah, and as a defensive lineman, you're going to be forcing other opponents to punt a lot. So congratulations, a big day for you, Brad. Congratulations to you and your family. The Marist community, I know, has, I'm sure, rallied around not only your signing, but John's early and so far very successful career. Appreciate you being here, and if we don't talk to you before, we'll talk to you next August at Media Day.
All right, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the call. Brad Fitzgibbon from Marist High School in Chicago. So a young man who obviously I saw a couple of comments in the chat, very well spoken, and obviously he's got a very good head on his shoulders, got a good upbringing, and we say it every year. This is year 4, I think, of doing this style of show. We're doing it later in the day this time to hopefully accommodate more people in the live chat and even on the phone line. But you see carbon copies year in and year out, and that's not to dehumanize these young athletes, but you just see the consistency with what Kirk's staff, what they target, who they target, and they go around the country, but there's a reason why Iowa targets certain schools, certain areas. Marist is a good example. They've done a lot of work up in Belleville, Michigan. Go around the country. There's I think of I'm trying to think of is it Cherry Creek High School in Colorado? Alex Padilla and Chase Brackney here a couple of years ago. It seems like they double up a lot. And part of that's connections, but part of that's also culture, right? And culture stands the test of time. So it's good to hear from Brad and appreciate him logging on to chat with us here to get things started here on our National Signing Day show. And of course, as I said at the outset, this is not just about National Signing Day because there's plenty of scuttlebutt as it relates to the transfer portal and as it relates to recruiting and potential. Iowa actually got some news today, direct correlation to signing day, but they added another DB, which is somewhat of a rare occurrence. Iowa typically maybe adds one or two guys the day before or the day of the early signing day period beginning. And so they were able to do that today with the DB. We'll get to him here in just a minute. But again, all is up for grabs. I've not been able to address Hawkeye fans since last night's buzzer beater from Josh Dix either. So if you want to mix in some basketball, I'll be here at least for the next hour or so as we talk about this big day and the prospects. And there are going to be plenty of videos in the coming days, folks, on my thoughts regarding people like Miller Moss, people like, the Cade McNamara situation comes to mind. There's another potential guy down at Texas A&M that Iowa's been linked to at quarterback. Again, how strong are these connections? Are there really any connections there? I think the Miller Moss one has more legs, but we're here to talk about it for the next hour plus and throughout the rest of the month on the YouTube channel. We'll go to our first caller of the day, James. Appreciate you being here, James.
How you doing?
Doing all right, sir. How are you?
I didn't see. I seen a replay of Josh Dix. Obviously, you were talking about that last. I seen the replay of it. Obviously, so I know what happened. Obviously, I'm not. I had a game, but obviously, I'm not sublime to that stuff. Like I was paying. I saw what happened. And it's good to see Josh do that because I know sometimes he's up and downs a little bit. I know he's young, but he's up and downs a bit. So it was good to see him hit that. And it's weird the J-Bo connection with the same team, like you said, the same score. That's a little bit weird too. But
very strange. Very strange. And Chris Collins brought that up right. I don't think he brought up the score, but post game he brought up that it was the same exact play and the same exact shot. Now J-Bo came back the other direction to fall the other way because he had an extra couple of
but I mean it's the same score and all that stuff. It was kind of crazy too, but no, yeah, it's this recruiting class. Obviously, like you said earlier with Mark yesterday, it kind of has to be small, but you like some pieces, and obviously I know you're going to talk about Avante Dean, but getting him as well, it's that. And I feel like you're starting to see this, especially with Jalen Watson last year, how much he kind of recruited and how much he was talking about wanting to play for Phil, right? And like understanding how good Phil is as a DB coach, if that makes sense, right? Like you see, then you get CJ Bell, you get Alante, you get Drew McPherson, right? So you get those pieces at that DB room where it's like you can see people want to play for Phil. Or people understand that they want to play for Phil because they understand how good Phil is in the DB room, and that might have had something to do with Alante.
And don't forget, we were just talking about culture and, being able to kind of take advantage of certain areas of the country, certain schools. There's another example. You brought up Alante Dean. He was the kid that Iowa added today, kind of last second in the class. He's expected to be more of a versatile DB that could probably play anywhere from cash to safety to corner. We'll see at 6', 200 is where he's listed at currently. But he's another kid. I mean, last year they bring in a DB. Rashad Godfrey is from the same school.
That's what I say. We seem to get a lot of kids from Steffner and Armwood High School. We just seem to get a lot of kids from down there. And we've recruited Florida really well, not just at that position, obviously running back with Jazz and Kamari, and then obviously you have those guys kind of in the back end. It seems like running back and DBs, a lot of times they go to Florida and they can get a couple of them here and there. So,
yep. And we know the connections. Liddell has done a real good job down there. I know Kelton Copeland spent quite a time in Florida, but it seems like since Liddell has come aboard, Iowa's done a lot better. I know Liddell was, I think he's the guy down there. In fact, I'm looking at his Rashad's profile. He was the primary guy there, and I'm guessing same thing for Deal today. So you talk about what Liddell has done with that running back room, and I've praised him for being able to retain the guys.
Oh yeah, and they got Nate McNeil or whatever. He's from Florida as well. So
yeah, and he's a back. He's a back.
Yeah. That's why I said you could play into that. That's why I said that as well. But yeah, no, it's good. The two. Obviously Yosei is Yosei, right? And he's in Epinesa, and you understand the Epinesa, connection to Iowa and just everything it's been with Epi, and then obviously AJ being here and all that stuff. And that's going to be probably that's going to be top 5 for sure. One of the greatest top 5 football families, just because of everything they've done. And it might be the greatest in some people's eyes. I don't know off the top of my head who you would put in that category, right? But I'm just saying, top 5 for sure. I don't know who you put in that category, right? But what the Evanescence has meant to this school, this program, and just the fan base in general has been amazing. Just to see them, all come really to Iowa has been
absolutely. And I think the energy that Epi brings to the program as a former Hawkeye is somewhat similar to what Roy Higgins brings. And I think both those guys generate a lot of positive buzz on social media, which I think maybe is overlooked by some people, but I do think there's value in that in this day and age because there's so much negativity, as we all know, and there has been so much negativity on social media in recent time for this program. And being able to retain that influence, I don't know does Jay have younger brothers? Maybe they could recruit Jay's younger brothers.
I don't know about that. I don't know, to be honest with you, Yosei was one of those where I was like, I thought he would go to Iowa, but you just never know with this whole thing, right? You just don't know how it works, right? You don't know if you're going to get those kids nowadays, especially with NIL. NIL wasn't as big of a factor, when AJ was in school as it is now, so you didn't know maybe if teams were throwing Yosei more money than what, obviously his brother couldn't get any money, right? So throwing, well, he, what I mean, like what they know of couldn't get any money, right? So in that portion, that's kind of what I was scared about. But I'm just happy we have him, and I'm happy that the Epinesa connection can keep going, and all that. But a couple more things for me. The biggest one I was surprised with, and I'm not trying to down nobody, I'm a big Iowa fan, but Terrence Smith, I feel like was something that like I don't expect us really to get receivers like that, just because. And I'm not saying that to be negative, right? It's just like we haven't had a good reputation with receivers, right? Like we haven't the last couple of years, and obviously that's something you want to change. That's something I want to change as a fan. Obviously, I want to be, have some good receivers come in here and there, and be able to feel comfortable with the receivers coming in. But it's very like refreshing, I feel like, to get somebody that you feel a little bit more comfortable with, right? And like that you can feel like maybe might be a playmaker down the road. And obviously, maybe not as a freshman, right? But somebody that could be a playmaker down the road and in that wide receiver room because you haven't really had that.
Yeah, and I mean, he sat on that offer a while. He sat on that visit. He sat on that offer. And for people that don't know about Terrence Smith, he had offers. It's very rare that I was able to pull a wide receiver from the likes of Minnesota and Iowa State. And those two schools I bring up because I was always battling those two schools. But those two schools have produced exceptional skill position players. We talk about this year in and year out, specifically at tailback, specifically at receiver. You could even argue tight end, but Iowa has done very well at tight end as well. But for Iowa to finally win one of these battles is huge, and they hold on to him through signing day. They get his name on the dotted line, and you see the two individuals who are involved here. Of course, John Budmeyer being the receivers coach. Seth Wallace, though, again, you see I'm guessing Tim Lester's offense was a big part to Terrence's decision. We've not had a conversation with Terrence since his commitment. We hope to do that here in the coming days. But I just always preach when you see those types of schools on a kid's list, that's a positive indication. But you also have to have so much more trust in Iowa's ability to evaluate now, James, with Tim Lester aboard, regardless of what John Budmeyer sees.
No, yeah, I do. I'm just saying, in the past, it's been very, very like missed more than it's been hit at that position, right? And like you don't know what you can trust and not trust. And obviously, I feel like I can trust Tim Lester, obviously, but like just what I've seen in the past, it's kind of like you get scarred a little bit from seeing that way. Like you don't see guys who can make the plays at that position where they keep recruiting guys, and you're like, I don't know how that's gonna be, right? Like that's just what kind of scares me a little bit. But two more positions I like to talk about, and then you can go on about your day. Obviously, tight end. I think we're one of the best schools at producing tight ends, and Thomas Meyer was he the best? Did he end up being their best overall recruit in this, like in the state of Iowa? I think he was, right? He was one last I checked, but I don't know if he fell or not.
You might be right on that. I honestly don't even look.
I'm pretty sure Thomas was one last time I looked.
247 has Thomas Meyer as the number one kid out of the state of Iowa, and on 3 has got. Let's see here. Does they have? He's considered number 1 according to.
I'm saying. I mean, obviously that's always the big thing to get to, but tight end's been in a position where obviously Lachey this year wasn't as used as some of the ones in the past, but he's going to get drafted at some point. I guarantee. I can kind of guarantee, whether it's late or not, he's still going to get drafted, right? Like
you can kind of guarantee me, James.
Well, I feel like with the reputation Iowa has that tight end, that somebody would take a flyer on him late and no matter what, 6 or 7 times, be like, oh, it's an Iowa tight end. He has that stuff. That's the way I look at it.
He had I think we forget he had a phenomenal start to his 2023 season, and had he not gotten hurt. Now, I know Cade got hurt as well, but nevertheless, had Lachey stayed healthy, he may have been better off leaving after 2023 because, new offense and, certainly in year 1, we didn't see as much involvement from tight ends, but we also saw more involvement, more balance with who they utilized. We saw a lot of passing game action to Addison Estringa. We saw Zach Ortworth get involved. We didn't see Johnny Pascuzzi as much. I know he had the big 40-yard catch, but I don't know. That's a good question. I've given that some thought over the last few days, James. Will Lachey get drafted? I don't know what the mock drafts say right now. I can't imagine. I'm like you. I can't imagine an Iowa tight end who has been a cemented starter for the last 3 years not getting drafted. So my guess is he'll go somewhere. But the fact that Iowa was able to bring in a solid class, it's not like one of these guys flipped. You talk about Thomas Meyer, but they also bring in, is it Eli Johnson from Wisconsin?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. But I'm saying, like, Go ahead. My bad.
Just real quick, it's a very similar built tight end group as last year when you brought in Gavin Hoffman and Michael Burt, to me, because I think
Yeah.
Eli Johnson might be flying a bit under the radar. Gavin Hoffman was kind of the hyped up guy.
Gavin Hoffman's more the Thomas Meyer, and then
exactly.
you
But
know,
we saw
Elijah Johnson's
Michael
more
Burt.
the.
If you notice this, James, we saw Michael Burt get some game action this season. He held on to the red shirt, but he did get some actual gameplay, and that's an indication like what they saw from him.
I'm just saying I like what we do at tight end. Obviously, and I like the understanding that Kirk has of like he has what he wants at tight end, but also it's worked, right? And that's one position where like it has worked, right? Where it's like he knows what he wants, but that position has worked and he knows what he wants, right? Like, and obviously they're not all the same, right? Obviously Kittle, Hawkinson, like they're not all the same people, right? But like he still got a different kinds of tight ends, but they all still got to the same level. And you know, Kittle's one of the best in the NFL right now. You know, it's just cool to see. But the one thing that does scare me, and I might be on that backside of this, is Jimmy Sullivan and the fact of this isn't a Tim Lester guy, right? He was committed before Tim Lester got there, right? So, like, and I get Tim Lester washed him, right? Like, I get that whole thing. But this also isn't a Tim Lester guy, right? And I get Kirk's the head coach at the end of the day, right? But I feel like I trust Tim Lester more at evaluating quarterbacks than I do Brian Ferentz, John Budmeyer, Kirk Ferentz, if that makes sense.
And let me ask you this: you're a fan, you follow recruiting as much as any other fan.
Yeah.
Are you at all concerned when you see, and what you just said is fair? He was not initially recruited by Tim Lester. I based on everything I've heard. I mean, I've not had a conversation. Of course, nobody can actually formally ask Tim Lester about these recruits until today. But my guess, everything I've heard, is that he likes Jimmy Sullivan. There's a reason why they've honored his scholarship offer. However, even On3's got him as their second lowest ranked player in Iowa's 25 class. Is that a concern to you?
One thing before, I seen somebody in your private chat say Mason Woods a tight end as well. That's a good call out as well, because we were talking about tight ends. I don't want to leave out Mason Woods and the LeVar connection. Obviously, you know that's why he went to Iowa. But I think it's like I said at wide receiver. It's another scar, right? It's a position that has scarred you for so long. You know what I mean? With like Deuce Hogan, Alex Padilla, right? You look at all the names matching up, and I'm not hating on any of those guys. I was a big Deuce Hogan guy in the fact of not player as much as person, right? Like I know Deuce Hogan's a great person, right? Like I know people that went to Iowa at that time, right? And they know Deuce Hogan were there. They know he's a real good person, right? Like I know they get a lot of good people, but it's just the scar you have at quarterback, right? You just see a lot of that, like you get scarred by that because you haven't seen them progress any quarterback, right? Like no quarterbacks really progressed under them, right? And I think that's more what it is. And then when you see how and obviously you see some of these offers, right? Like Michigan State, Illinois, Minnesota. I know you're looking at the page right now, right? Like it's not saying he's not a good player. That's not what my point was. It's more just like I don't know how much I trust the decision making before Tim Lester was there, if that's who it was. And obviously, I know Tim Lester probably did sign off on it, like you said, but that's just more what I was getting to. I don't know how much I trust the people who make the decisions there at quarterback because they haven't shown me anything.
And that's a fair. There's no reason why it's unfair to be hesitant to jump on board until you see it. And let's be honest, as much as I think Tim Lester did a great job revitalizing, I think he deserves some credit for the success on the ground. You know, a lot of credit needs to be given to the offensive line. A lot of credit needs to be given to Caleb Johnson specifically, but Tim Lester is the offensive coordinator, and the run game really took off once Tim Lester took over. So is that a coincidence? I would think not. But at the same time, it's also fair to look even at this offer list and say, none of the schools on this list, James, even these Power 4 schools,
have been good at quarterbacks, really.
Are known for quarterback play.
Yeah. And you look at Illinois and Minnesota and even Michigan State. I mean, I know Michigan State had a coaching change before that whole and obviously Johnson Smith's the one that probably offered him, right? So I'm not saying that point, but like Illinois, they had to go to the portal because they didn't really like what they had, right? Minnesota went to the portal because they didn't really like what they had.
In the portal, like
they had,
crazy.
right? Like,
and obviously they had a coaching.
Yeah.
See, that's the hard thing about this too. Is some of these schools, Minnesota's been stable, but some of these schools had so many coaching changes. It's almost hard to call a certain school, okay, running back you or quarterback you anymore because there's so much turnover with these schools.
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree with that, and that's one thing that you never know. But I didn't even think about that. You made a great point of a lot of these schools aren't really quarterback schools either, and obviously, maybe if you got a quarterback school, it would be it would be like different to see. And obviously, you know, with what Iowa State got out of this class and Mansky, who I think obviously Iowa offered, you know, like it's a little bit worse to see, but I also don't blame the kid, right? Because like I'm sorry, as an Iowa fan, if I'm not an Iowa fan, right, if I'm impartial, right, obviously if I'm an Iowa fan, I would choose Iowa any day, right? Like, but if I'm impartial and I'm looking at it from Alex Mansky's point, what would I choose, Iowa State or Iowa, right? And I'm a quarterback, right? I see Brock Purdy striving in the NFL, and I see nobody that Iowa really has done go anywhere, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's how my point would be. Like as a kid, if I was impartial to it, right? Like, and that's why I can't blame Alex Mansky for doing what he did. But
Absolutely. There's a lot to be seen still with what Tim Lester can accomplish at quarterback. There's a lot to be seen yet as it relates to who Iowa brings into the portal. And like, even though that's the other thing about these guys, like they bring in a freshman this year and Jimmy Sullivan. Look what happened to James Rezar. He was there for a couple of
yeah,
months and moved to a different position. Now, I don't think that probably is going to happen with
no,
Sullivan.
I don't think he's also as fast as Resar. Resar was fast, right? So like that's two different things a little bit, but. No, it's definitely interesting to see. You love to see everybody commit, and you love to see when you get everybody sign the dotted line, like everybody you've had. And obviously, you added Lante Dean, right? So credit to Lante. Hopefully, he's great as a Hawk too. And but you get to see all the same guys add. You don't really lose anybody, right? And like that's always important to see, right? But like I said, it's culture and it's Kirk, right? He's been there forever. You know what you're gonna get out of him, right? And a lot of people, like I said, the Armwood people, right? Like we were talking about Armwood High School stuff near Florida, right? They've had so many people come through there that Alante probably understands like, hey, this is what I'm gonna get, right? When I go there, right? Or no, whoever it was, it wasn't Lante, was it? Was it Lante?
Who are we talking about?
Who's from Stephen? Who's from Armwood High
Alante.
School? Yeah, Lante. That's
Alante.
what I thought. That's what I thought. Yeah, I say he probably understands what to expect because we've had so many people go through. Like it's like kind of like Brad when you were just on with Brad, right? Like people from Marist have went through that program, so Brad understands what to expect going through that program, right? People from from Armwood have went through that program, so Lante probably understands what to expect from that program, right? Like that helps you a lot when we're recruiting, right? When you try to go the same route, the same basis, in the same like state as towns, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, James. Appreciate you calling in, sir. And we're going to be here for at least the next hour. So feel free to chime back in later if you.
It was good for sure, and happy we're on, and I'm happy we got what we got, obviously. And I know it's a long road, and I know Kirk said he's back, and whatever he chooses, he chooses. I'm gonna be a fan no matter whether Kirk's the coach or whether somebody else is the coach. But one more thing, I don't know if you've seen who you and I hired as the new head coach as well. They hired the former Drake head coach. So obviously that'll be interesting to see how that pans out with recruiting in the state as well too, because you know a lot of those smaller guys, that's where they go, right? You know, a lot of those smaller guys who don't get the Iowa State offers end up at UNI, you know, just because it's easier for them to get. So it kind of be interesting to see how the state recruiting happens with the new coach as well. So
been a long time since I had a new coach up in Cedar Falls. So
definitely,
James, appreciate you calling in, sir. We'll talk to you. If we don't talk to you sooner, we'll talk to you Saturday.
Yep, sounds good. Enjoying it.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, we've got a caller on. We got a couple of callers, but one on StreamYard. We got one on the phone line that's been patiently waiting. So let's add a good friend of mine, Kyle Spence, the NAIA legend. How you doing?
Well, doing well. I'm excited to be here. This is always a fun kind of time of year after we've kind of let bygones be bygones of some of the frustrations of the last couple of weeks. I'm not somebody, you know, obviously I've been looking through it, just kind of casually preparing for today and tonight, and just getting ready to kind of hear about some of these guys that are coming in. But, you know, not everybody has a chance to sort of follow week after week recruiting. You know, some of these guys are being recruited for a year and a half, 2 years. And, you know, Iowa is a program that finds the diamond in the rough, right? So it's really hard to know ahead of time who these people are beyond we know they're going to be high character and we know they're going to work hard and we know that they trust Iowa's development. So I'm always excited to get on and talk through some of these guys. And, you know, we'll look back on this hopefully in 2 or 3 years and say that obviously we've got some bigger name, particularly one bigger name this year, but look back on this in a couple of years and say, man, this is where some of these guys started and this is where they're at now.
What'd you think of Brad?
Really liked him. Very, very very, very Kirk Ferentz type of kid, I thought. Well spoken. Obviously somebody that, I mean, he was just talking about the conversations that he had with the coaching staff and wanting to be upfront and honest both ways. And seems like a stand-up kid. On, you know, obviously that size is a huge benefit. I think you touched on it with him, like somebody that has a chance to get on the field early, probably because of the being 280 coming out of high school. There's not too many kids, even the 4 and 5 stars that are that big. So it's very, very excited to have him in, as well as the rest of the class.
So we want to, first of all, acknowledge the super chat that we received here a couple of minutes ago, and then we'll go. We got a lot of things to get to here, and I don't want to be here too late. Erica, appreciate the super chat. Epi and Hawkeyes need to be hired on to promote the team in some capacity. Maybe recruiters. I could see both of them being great at recruiting. Now, here's what I think. I think those guys, and I mean this in all seriousness, Kyle, those two guys epitomize, not Hawkeyes, but epitomize what Iowa need. And I think this needs to go far beyond Iowa. But I believe that there are going to be, especially with this age of social media and how it's advanced, there needs to be in each program. I know there's social media people and people that post and all that junk. There need to be privately, maybe privately is the wrong word. There need to be individuals that are hired to be hype people online, to promote like those guys promote. So I don't know what Roy Higgins' full-time job is, but I'm guessing he's probably not going to move his whole family to go work for Iowa to be some hype guy. But I'm saying, like, people do rally around that kind of thing. And, you know, you and I make fun of the troll accounts and the fake aliases out there and all that do get a lot of followers and get all this engagement and nonsense. What they need to do is they need to get somebody who understands social media a lot better than you and I understand social media, that can become a cog like Epi and Roy Higgins have been. I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't know what exactly it looks like, but I think it involves more than just hiring on somebody to run your social media page. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, it's tough because it's like, some of those accounts, like you said, they do generate a lot of interest. And some of that is from just, I mean, people saying off the wall stuff, just crazy stuff, stuff that has no chance of happening. So I'm torn between, you know, the reality of the crazy stuff is what gets the attention. And also these pages are very good at generating attention and revenue for themselves at times. But yeah, I do think there's a role for that type of energy. I mean, we see with Big Noon Kickoff when it was, or not Big Noon Kickoff, the Fox program that was in Iowa City, with Big E, the wrestler. I mean, he's the same type of person, right? Like he's the same type of hype guy. And that was great for television, great for social media engagement too. Yeah.
And I don't even know, I wonder how he's a good example of somebody. Could you hire somebody like that part-time that, you know, is literally paid to I don't know that it can be dictated when they tweet or when they post. And I don't know. It's an interesting comment from Eric, and I think there's some legs to it. Epi Epinesa, that whole family, they've been in the stadium for like the last 10 years because for people that don't know, Eric is a linebacker who's also was just honored here this past Saturday or this past Friday. So they get one guy out, they bring another one in, and then literally next year, Yose Epinesa will be a member of the freshman class. It's just weird that they've staggered their children perfectly for Iowa. So, anyways,
season tickets for over a decade.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go back to our call-in line. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line? Hello, you're on the air.
Yep. Can you hear me, Trent?
We got you now, Trent. Gotcha. Appreciate you calling.
Yeah. Hey, Corey. How you doing, man?
Doing all right. How are you, bud?
Oh, not bad. First off, just thank you for doing just even shows like this and all the post-game shows you do for basketball. I don't know where you find the time and the energy, but thanks, man.
I wish I had an answer for you, sir. I appreciate the kind words. It does mean a lot. And I saw there were several people in the chat who were all of a sudden, people are in a great, and I'm not talking about you, Trent, but Kyle, people are in this very gracious mood today. I mean, I've been getting ripped for the last 3 months for a whole laundry list of things, and everybody in the chat now is give a thumbs up to Corey. He's the best. I mean, we got people calling me the GOAT, and we got we got Cyhawk C Money saying that I'm a gift to Iowa football, and I mean, what on earth? Anyways, go ahead, Trent.
Now the
I'll take.
turntables.
Kyle, are you on too?
I am indeed, yeah.
Oh, all right, man. Well, yeah, I've never got to talk to you, dude. I often think to my dad, I think if me and Kyle teamed up against Coach Patterson and Corey, that we might lose our minds at one time.
Well, that has happened before, Trent. That has happened already.
Yeah. No, I guess I know it's a recruiting show or signing day show, but first off, let me say how what a disappointing year, right? Man, those expectations were high, and then I look at the schedule next year, and it's just you talk about a real gauntlet. That's the true definition of the word.
Yeah, it's going to be a gauntlet. And when Kirk announced his intentions of returning today, that was my thought: is he's going to break that record in September, and then what happens after that? Now, here's what people can be excited about, and this is the only thing that I think. I mean, obviously, power to the players. There's some good in that. I know Jordan Bohannon was. We want to reflect on how this whole NIL thing got started several years back, and Jordan Bohannon wasn't the only guy that was an advocate for it, but boy, he was sure front and center. And I think one of the positives that comes from the melee that we have now is when you have quote unquote rebuild years. I saw somebody earlier say they felt like this is going to be a rebuild season next year. You don't. Like, we can't guarantee that it's going to be a down year because we don't know what Iowa is going to be able to accomplish in the portal. Now, do I think they're going to be able to get a top 10 portal class? No. But what if Tim Lester is able to go land Connor Wiegman from Texas A&M as an example? All right, and we're going to talk about the quarterbacks, but how does that change our perspective? I think it changes our perspective significantly. What if Phil Parker is able to go grab this safety up from North Dakota State? There's guys that are hopping in the portal left and right that are, I mean, they're potential all-conference guys. Now, there's a lot of suitors. A lot of them cost money. I get that. But the portal gives you the ability to rebuild a program fast. Just ask Kurt Cignetti at Indiana. And if you're effective with it and you have the assets, the funds at your disposal, you can ensure that the floor is higher than in typical down years, if that makes sense. So I don't know what I was going to do, but they have an opportunity with Tim Lester and the uptick in offensive production that they experienced and showcased this year to at least be competitive on the transfer portal circuit. And this is the first time we've really been able to say that.
No, I think that's where I was going to go with this whole thing is so I listen to you and Mark every Tuesday. So shout out Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. I'm sorry I hope that doesn't get anybody in trouble.
No, that's great.
All right. But so like you and Elliot yesterday were talking about how, and I'm not knocking you for this. I'm just bringing it up purely because this is where I was going to go with this anyhow, is that, like, I think you guys, I don't know if you so much were, but I remember Elliot saying that we don't want a mercenary for a quarterback. And at the beginning of the day yesterday, I thought that was, even before I saw, I mean, this was long before you guys came on, but I thought the same thing. I was like, man, I don't want a one-year disposal quarterback. And then as the day went on and I knew signing day was the next day today, I was like, man, you know what? Like, I got to buy in. This might be the reality of college football. And if you can go out and land Miller Moss, I think you do. And I'm going to be completely honest. If Iowa doesn't spend, and Matt Rule said it right, $1.5 million on a, and that's a good quarterback. with a good quarterback. And here's another thing. I just want to bring this up quick before I forget is Tyler Barnes today said, I want to bring up two things Tyler Barnes said. One I think is positive, and one kind of threw me back when I really thought about it after the press conference. But the first thing is, he said, the question was about Terrence Smith, and he said, yeah, now we got to go out and get a guy with speed. So that's a super positive thing to hear. And then, but the one thing, and Corey, I don't know if you caught this or Kyle, that he said that threw me back is when they were asking questions about quarterbacks, he said, we don't want to statue back there at quarterback. No matter how good your offensive line is, at times you're going to have to move around. Did you guys catch that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did hear. I guess maybe I didn't hear exactly the way you repeated it, but yeah, I did hear that. And for the record, my only hesitancy on Miller Moss, I know Elliott yesterday on the show brought up, the fact that he's only got 1 year. That's one thing. My other concern, and I'll voice this for people that didn't hear the show with Mark and Kyle, I'll get your take on this as well. My concern is simply situational, because you brought in Cade McNamara from a blue blood. He was, quote unquote, developed by a former quarterback, a QB's guru in Jim Harbaugh. He got beat out by a highly touted, more mobile version of himself. And he's sort of bitter. So he enters the portal and jumps to Iowa and becomes the promised son. There are too many parallels there on the outside, like on surface level. And I don't know that some of those, I don't know that bill fits, that glove fits Miller Moss's hand. But I look at Miller Moss, coached by Lincoln Riley, a QB's guru, loses his job, isn't very mobile. And I'm just like, okay, what? And I trust Tim Lester more than I've ever. I trust Tim Lester's. I trust a quarter of Tim Lester's brain more than I trust all of Brian Ferentz's. And I'm talking about football. I'm not talking about personal. I'm talking about football brain. So if he sees something in Miller Moss and is like, okay, yeah, this is the guy we want to target, I'm going, that's great. Okay. I'm not going to act like I know more than Tim Lester, and I'm not claiming to act like I know more than Brian Ferentz. I lauded that pickup when they landed Cade McNamara at that time. And some things you can't foresee. I'm just a little bit gun shy based on some of what happened in landing Cade McNamara. You also get the suspension for Kirk Ferentz. I think it's strange, Trent, that there was a tweet from Pete Nakos of On3 that said Iowa's an early suitor for Miller Moss before he had even entered into the portal officially.
I agree with
so
that.
What does that mean? What does it mean? I mean, we know there's tampering everywhere, but Iowa just got busted for early improper contact before Cade was officially in the portal. So, that doesn't mean there was improper contact, but it does. It smells like it did 2 years ago. So there's just some things that situation makes me a little bit squirmish. And I think if you bring him in, that basically says so long to Marco Lainez. And maybe that means so long to Marco Lainez anyways. And some people they're convinced because of what they hear certain people repeat online and on message boards. They're just convinced that Marco Lainez can't throw a football. So they're just, to heck with him and his whole future at Iowa anyways. I'm not in that boat. I like the fact that they have got a really athletic guy in Marco Lainez who is still green. And by the way, he's only a redshirt freshman this year. Only a redshirt freshman. He's still very young. He's coming off a thumb injury. Sounds like he's going to be healthy for the bowl game. Will he play? We don't know. But I'm just saying, you bring in a guy, if you're going to bring in a guy and potentially drive off a young talent piece, now bring in a guy who's got at least a couple of years and man alive, just make sure that it's not another drama queen. And I guess I just called Cade McNamara a drama queen, but I don't want that to happen again. And I don't think it will, but hopefully you can see where I'm coming from, because there are some similarities, and he's from Southern California. So, that's a big jump from Southern California. He literally grew up in Southern California, went to USC, and now he's interested in potentially coming to Iowa. So here's the deal. There are other schools on his list as well, according to Nakos. he could end up at any one of those schools. And who knows if Iowa can compete NIL wise with Louisville and Michigan and those other schools on the list. So I'm not about to jump on that hype train this early. And even if it was likely to happen, I'd have some reservations.
Yeah. And this is the tough thing too. Like, we haven't seen, and I'm curious to see after a couple of years here what quarterback development looks like at Iowa, because we've said over and over again for years that Iowa can't develop quarterbacks. And in the past, what that meant is if you couldn't recruit and develop quarterbacks, you had no quarterbacks, right? So now, whether we like it or not, they at least have the option to buy a quarterback. And people don't like when that phrase is used, but that's what it is. I mean, everybody knows the good transfer quarterbacks cost over $1 million, and they're throwing money at these kids. So at least now there's a way out if you can't develop a certain position. That's kind of the way I look at it. Iowa, if they can't develop a Marco Lainez, if they can't develop some of the younger guys that they've recruited over the last couple of years, they at least do have some way out. But man, if the same story repeats itself again, now I'm a little bit more optimistic that it wouldn't with Miller Moss, purely because unless I'm missing something, I don't think he has the injury history that Cade had when he came to Iowa. Does Miller have a serious injury? I mean, I know he had one in 2021. He had an injury that he maybe redshirted because of. But certainly the last couple of years he's been healthy, right?
Yeah, Connor Wiegman he's got more of an injury backstory. And I saw Tanner wanted to know what I know about the Connor Wiegman potential interest. I know nothing other than the tweet that was from Pete Nakos. Now, let me just make something abundantly clear. If you go back and look at those two tweets from Pete Nakos, one was about a week ago regarding Miller Moss. One was it yesterday regarding Connor Wiegman? And Connor Wiegman, if people don't know who he is, he was a 5-star recruit. He was a top 3 quarterback nationally a couple of recruiting classes ago. Does he have 2 or 3 years left? Maybe check
3.
I thought he only had 2, but we'll double check.
Okay,
that.
he was a sophomore this year, so I don't know if it looks like he's got 2 years left. He's got 2 years left.
And I mean, here's a kid who's probably more mobile than Miller Moss, does have more of an extensive injury history. So I guess if you're going to go after somebody who's been in a blue blood and probably has already, I'm guessing Miller Moss and Connor Wiegman have already made a good amount of cash playing college football. Go after somebody that you might be able to, have for 2 years, even if it costs you a little bit more in the long run. The thing about Cade, when he initially committed, Kyle, I advocated for that situation. The reason I thought that situation fit was because of who Iowa's quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator was.
Yeah, that's kind of the variable. Is we're waiting to see what a Tim Lester developed quarterback from start to finish looks like.
Right. So why do I want to see a guy who is coming in? I don't know that that's the type of guy that we need to see from Tim Lester. I maybe, unless they're in some win now mode that I'm not aware of. Like, if we want to talk about a rebuilding year, and like you said earlier, maybe this is just the new era where you're just going year to year to year to year to year. If that's the case, then I guess I'll throw my hands up because I don't have the answers. But I would think with Tim Lester's acumen and his coaching experience, pedigree, history, and his playing history, that they'd be better suited to go after a guy who's got at least a couple of years of eligibility remaining, and that Tim can form a relationship and work with and acclimate to this offense. But you know what? Kirk has made comments and quarterbacks have made comments in the past that this offense, even for an experienced guy, takes at least a year to figure out. So if that's true, why are you bringing anybody in for 1 year? Obviously that's not true. Or Brian Ferentz's offense was just so much more complex than Tim Lester's, which is laughable.
That's funny. Yeah.
Anyways, anything else, Trent? I know I'm kind of going on a tangent, but those are my 2 cents.
I get it, but I think if you're not in the win now mode, then you're just giving up. I was not the type of program right now that, and you guys might disagree wholeheartedly, and that's fine, but we don't have time to take a big step back. You're talking Kirk's got probably, I'm guessing next year is his last year. It's just, I just pure speculation, but I think that's probably it. He gets the record and he's done. Fine, so be it. But I think, guys, so quarterback is one issue, and they're going to have to spend a lot of money, and you got a lot of other holes to fill on this in this roster next year too. And then, but and another thing Tyler Barnes said was, and that makes me think Miller Moss is a candidate, is he says we're going to do what we have to do now for the team to win, and that was reassuring to me because I'm in the same mindset. It's not time to take a step back.
Okay.
You got to keep your foot on the gas.
I think that's I think it's a very good point, Trent. And BJ asks a great question in the chat. He says, "Can you rebuild with a 70-year-old head coach?" And that's a fair point. I'm at a bit of a standstill with myself, Trent, because I have to admit, I look at the schedule next year and I look at everything they lose, and I just cannot imagine Iowa is successful enough in the transfer portal to overcome all the attrition and the schedule. I just can't imagine it. So if we're going to I'm not saying, when I say win now mode, I'm not talking about can they get back to 8 wins. I'm talking about can you get to 10 wins and compete for a playoff spot. That's what I mean when I say win now mode. So can they somehow win in the portal enough to be a potential 10-win team next year? Did anybody want to comment on that? Trent, you believe that they can win 10 games with that schedule? That's what they're going to have to win.
Here. We can. This is a question for you, Corey. I think you probably know better than we do as far as where they're at in terms of roster numbers. But one of the things I was going to bring up as far as this class is they do have the second smallest class in the Big Ten, and the only class that's smaller than Iowa's class this year is Purdue, who has 8 players signed, and that's just because of the coaching chaos that they've got there with them firing their coach and going 1-11 and all that stuff. So, to me, a smaller class, and by the way, too, I mean, if you look at some of the positions, like they're only bringing in 1 offensive lineman in this class. I mean, that's got to be the first time ever under Kirk Ferentz that they brought in 1 offensive lineman. I mean, they've got roster spots on the offensive line, and they've got roster spots at certain positions on offense. And I don't know how much of that is by design, because obviously they've got to get down to the 105 that people have been talking about all year. But how much of that is we've got to get down to 105, and how much of that is we want to leave some spots open because we think we can strike big in the portal? I don't know.
Well, they have to get down to 105. I mean, that is reality. So,
but how far away are they from that right now? With bringing in 15 and then losing what they're losing.
That would be a better that'd be a better question for somebody who's better at numbers and I haven't analyzed that. That'd be a great study. And we also don't know what walk-ons are going to return, because we know that the walk-on legacy at Iowa is going to be dampened a bit by the new roster limits. So we don't know what, if any of those walk-ons are going to be returning next season.
Well, looks like we've got 128 based on, I'm assuming these comments are correct. We've got 2 people saying that they have 128 people on the roster, and they lose 26 or something. So that's they're minus 11 there. So they've still got to cut 10, 12 guys if that number is correct.
Yeah.
So
anyways, go ahead, Trent. Did you want to weigh in on this?
So I'll just go back to your question that you asked here. Do I think Iowa, even if in the portal, if they hit it big, will they win 10 games? I'm a diehard Iowa fan, man, but that's why I'm saying quarterback is so important in this portal window. I think even with a good to great quarterback, this team's ceiling might be 8-4, maybe 9-3, but realistically, right now, without any moves and just knowing what the roster is coming back, this isn't a bowl team next year. And that's I guess what
so that's when I brought up win now versus rebuild. Like, if you go get a guy like Miller Moss for a year, are you potentially hurting your prospects in 2026 and beyond? Part of rebuilding is getting young guys experience, trial by fire, diving in the deep end head first. And then they're better in years 2, 3, 4 beyond. And I know there's less of those stories now with the transfer portal era, but I'm just saying, would you rather bring in Miller Moss for a year if that means you win 8, maybe 9 games, which, by the way, will not be enough for a playoff spot, and then you have to start Jimmy Sullivan in 2025, who's got no experience? Does that limit you with your ceiling, or excuse me, in 2026? Does that limit your 2026 ceiling? That's my point.
I don't even know if that's where we are in the sport anymore, because I think by 2026 they could be talking about buying somebody else and rebuilding again. I mean, this is what so many of these teams, I mean, not the dominant teams are not doing that, but there are a lot of teams that are rebuilding and then buying a new class and then rebuilding and buying a new class. Like, we might get to that point and there might be enough NIL again at that point to go buy someone else. That's what I'm saying with the quarterback development. I mean, it sounds absurd, but like, if you have a position, just say for the sake of argument, the guys that Iowa has now, Marco and some of the other ones that they recruit over the next couple of years don't pan out. And it's still clear that, like, okay, as long as Kirk's the coach, and who knows if he'll be here beyond next year, we don't know that. But if it just becomes clear that as long as Kirk's the coach, they're not going to develop some star QB, maybe they go that direction. That's what I'm saying. Like, they could do perfectly well at developing tight end, linebacker, offensive line, defensive line, safety, corner, and then just say, okay, we're not going to be one of those teams that rebuilds the entire roster through the portal, but we're just going to buy a quarterback every 2 years. But I mean, it's not beyond the realm of possibility in this college football.
And
it's not, and that's, I'm sorry, but that's exactly what I'm getting at, Kyle. Is you got to be in the win now mode all the time. Like, so, and that's my point, right? Like, that might be where Iowa is.
Okay. I'm just behind the times. I just can't imagine Kirk doing that. If he's sticking around for 2 to 3 more years, is he really going to go all in the portal every year? That just goes against everything that he has stood for 25 years. And yes, the game has changed dramatically, but I still think Kirk thinks he can do it his way, even with what was said today during that press conference with Tyler Barnes and with Coach Ferentz.
And by the way, too, if we're talking about Miller Moss and some of the transfers now, one of the things, like, there's 2 things actually. Number one is, if you bring a transfer quarterback in and they don't pan out again, you're going to start losing the fan base on this stuff. And who knows what swarm donations look like once that happens. Like, if you bring in somebody else and it turns out to be Cade McNamara, I mean, people are not happy right now with Cade McNamara, and I believe rightfully so. And you do that a second time, you'll lose some of the fan base as far as swarm donations, I think. But also, you'll lose the country as far as transfer quarterbacks, because people will look at Iowa, probably correctly if the next one doesn't pan out, as a place that quarterbacks go to die. So, you know, it's another reason to be a little bit more careful about who you select in this upcoming window, I think. Because you're going to build yourself a reputation.
All right, guys. Fair enough. Sounds good. Hey, like I said, Corey, appreciate everything you do, man. I'll keep listening to all the post-game shows this basketball season, and go Hawks.
Appreciate that, sir. Go Hawks. Appreciate the call from Trent. And these are good conversations to have. And there's obviously a lot of moving parts here. You go spend a lot of money on Miller Moss, and I know Erica asked the question earlier, do they have enough to go get a guy like Moss? Well, maybe you scrounge enough to get a guy like Moss, but then how much does that hurt you in the sweepstakes for other players that are going to cost a chunk of change? They do need help up front along that offensive line. They're losing 2 first all Big Ten players, along with a really experienced guy in Mason Richmond. By
the way, I would personally prefer that they go get 2 offensive linemen rather than 1 quarterback, like 2 good starting offensive linemen than 1 starting quarterback. I would prefer that.
I don't know. I don't know with this scheme. I don't know. It's really early for me to say. All I know is I'm a little gun shy, Kyle, because they've landed some players in the portal at offensive line that have sort of tanked. I mean, they don't see the quarterback, but it's a little different. Now, here's the deal. The run game in general there's a lot. We obviously saw a change this year with Caleb Johnson in production, but we've heard for years about how the zone concepts are harder to teach. And in general, they've been less. Iowa's running game almost every other year, when you throwing out this season in 2020, has been below what anybody would anticipate it would be under a Kirk Ferentz-led offensive line. And the reason I bring that up is it's changed a little bit with Tim Lester. We see more gap concepts brought into the playbook week in and week out. We saw more of those plays instituted week in and week out. But I wonder, like, is that the reason why guys like Coy Cronk and I'm trying to think of the kid that transferred in who was initially committed to Virginia 2 years ago. What was his name now? I can think of his great young guy. I can think of his face. But like Coy Cronk was a 4-year starter at Indiana, and he was like not starting by the end of 2020.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you're wrong, but man, the most important position on the field is quarterback. And as much as you would think transfer offensive linemen would do well here, I don't know if it's been the scheme or what, but I don't know that that's necessarily happened. When's the last time Iowa's had a real successful offensive line transfer? I'm trying to think of the last example.
I don't know off the top of my head. There haven't been any that were standouts.
Okay. So you're willing to invest in that, bringing in a guy like that.
Well, I mean, the question I would ask is if you're not developing them, it's purely a scouting decision, right? Because if they're not going to be developed at Iowa, it's a schematic thing and it's a scouting thing. It's tough. I'm not saying it's an easy decision. I'm just saying, if you could have 2 offensive linemen that you're confident would work out and be slam dunk starters from day one. Just think about it. Okay. If you have a starting quarterback's worth of money, if you have $1.5 million, say, because that's the figure that's been thrown out, even say you have $1 million to throw at a quarterback, and you break that into $500,000 for 2 offensive linemen, that's got to get you 2 really good offensive linemen, doesn't it? That's got to be enough money to get 2 very, very solid Power 5 offensive linemen.
Maybe.
Right? I don't know. Now we're playing salary cap in college football.
Yeah.
We're playing Madden roster builder.
Other schools are working without a salary cap. There's
Correct.
schools that have a salary cap because they have no more money.
There's a team that's number 1 in the country that has salary cap turned off in their settings.
By the way, there's a question brought up. I don't know if I saved it, but it was in the chat. Isaac wants to know over under 7 wins next year. And of course, we're going to have lots of time. We haven't even finished this season. We've got a bowl game ahead, but all I know is I've ran through this schedule several times. They get Albany week 1. They're at Iowa State. We'll do this a number of times, but on paper, at Iowa State's a loss. Can we agree on that? On paper.
Yep. On paper.
On paper, that
when
is a loss.
When was the last time they lost there? Was it
2014? No, it was 2014. Yeah.
10 years ago. Yeah.
Okay, but on paper, it's a loss. Indiana and Kinnick? Indiana.
I feel great about that now. By the way, when this schedule came out last year, that was one of the games we felt good about.
True. Yeah.
So now you kind of add that to the tier of Oregon and Penn State and USC and some of these teams that are like better teams.
They just lost to Michigan. I'll go ahead and share my what I'm looking at here for anybody that has not seen the schedule. This is not the opponents. The games are official, but the dates are not. There are not dates on.
I keep seeing people on Twitter saying we're going to lose our last 5 games in a row or whatever, or 4 of our last 5 games. These are not in a row. This is not the order.
But on paper, Iowa State's a loss. Indiana, I probably have to say, is a loss right now, simply because Indiana is about to play in the college football playoff. They've got 1 loss on the season.
Does help to get them in Kinnick, though.
It does. I would anticipate Iowa takes care of business against Michigan State and Minnesota, although they just lost to Michigan State. Minnesota's always a tough game. Would definitely pick Iowa. So at that point, with wins over Albany, UMass, Michigan State, and Minnesota, that's 4 wins. All right.
Rutgers,
could they steal
5?
Yeah. Okay. Rutgers is 5 potentially at Rutgers. At Nebraska is 6. That's going to be a hard game to win, but I would probably think
Iowa two major coaches and half their roster to the portal. So
I think
we'll see
they can win. They just won at Wisconsin 2 years ago, and they look to be in rough shape. So it's not crazy to see 7 wins, but I mean,
it's for the first time in a long time, it's crazier to see 10 wins than it is to see 5 or 6.
Yeah, it's hard to find 10. It's hard to find 10. Now, here's my point in bringing this up, Kyle. Do you really believe the macro of how we see 2025 changes with 2 elite offensive linemen via the portal, or does it change more so if you were able to land Connor Wiegman, a former 5-star quarterback from Texas A&M? I think that is, first of all, that energizes the fan base more than any offensive line.
There's no doubt. I mean, I think with a really good offensive line, or at least above average offensive line, and combination of Marco Inez and Sully at quarterback and the running back room they have returning, that rushing attack has a chance to be elite. With Miller Moss, and I know we're kind of not going that direction, at least with this conversation, but I think with a statue or somebody that doesn't run as much in the pocket, I think that hurts the running game a little bit. I would be excited to watch them run the ball the way they ran the ball this year, with a couple of offensive linemen added and Sully in at quarterback, maybe some packages for Marco, the way they did for Sully this year, and then the running backs that they have coming back. I would be excited to watch that.
You think Marco's sticking around?
I hope so. I'm not going to comment on that, but I hope he does. I hope he doesn't. Right. I hope he doesn't leave.
Lemansky says, to Corey's point, Cade skipped walk out at senior day. To this fan, very odd. Well, it's obvious now. He has announced that he's entering the transfer portal. So
can we just go ahead and say, by the way, the statement that he put out was garbage. The end of that statement was ridiculous.
Go ahead and say it, Kyle. You comment away, and
Corey, I'm not going to let Corey get in trouble for saying stuff that riles people up, but I will say it. Him saying that he was intending to play in that game at Nebraska was total garbage. It was always garbage. He was never intending on playing in that game, and I wish he would have just said that.
Let me ask you this. Why do you believe that he never intended to play in that game?
Because him playing another game would have hurt his chances of getting a medical red shirt.
Are we sure on that? Are we positive on that?
Well, how many games did he play in?
Well, let's see. He went down against Northwestern. So let's do the math here. I mean,
is he even guaranteed to get another year?
I'm not aware he is. Yeah. He played 1, 2, 3, 4. No, did he play against Illinois State? He was allowed to play against Illinois State, even though he was involved.
Yeah, it was just Kirk. Yeah.
Which, did we ever talk about that? Why was he allowed to play in that game?
I don't know. They're just punishing the coaching staffs. They're not punishing the players.
All right. So Illinois State, Iowa State, Troy, Minnesota, Ohio State.
So how is he getting a medical red shirt when he's played 8 games in a season?
I don't know. I mean, unless it's the NCAA is looking at total amount of time lost with all his. Remember, he missed most of last season, Kyle.
Yeah.
So the medical red shirt might be based upon that's what I'm saying. Like, if it's based on last year alone, him playing against Nebraska would have made no difference. Because I could also see, and I know there's scuttlebutt out there, and I've heard a couple of different things. I'm always hesitant to repeat what I hear because I don't ever know. Like, unless it's from an unbelievably accurate source, it's like I don't know what to believe, and I hate just throwing garbage at the wall and seeing if it sticks. But there's been people that have said playing against Nebraska would have made no difference because Cade believes he had eligibility lost in 2023, and he got mad because Kirk basically told him they're playing Jackson Stratton against Nebraska. That's one version of one side of the story. And I'm not defending Cade McNamara. I'm just saying
that is really struggle to believe that. I really struggle to believe that.
Yeah.
I don't think, I mean, I don't know. I don't buy that.
Lemansky, appreciate the reminder, everybody. If you're here, we got about 260 people logged on watching this evening. First of all, like the video, like the stream. It does help. And this has been a busy time of year. November is probably the busiest time of the year. But now, as I try to take a deep breath in, we got all this portal news. We got signing day. And I apologize if this is not the typical National Signing Day type of show. If you are not following the college football landscape as closely as some, National Signing Day got moved up. So typically it's later in December. So in my opinion, this really comes at a crappy time. Half a week after the final game of the regular season, and you're jumping into signing day. Meanwhile, there's a bunch of players announcing their intention to enter the portal. The portal window is also shrunk to 20 days. And, I know timing and all this, I don't know that there is a perfect, I even asked Kirk Ferentz that question. I think it was at Kids Day or at the spring practice. What's the ideal time frame for you for a transfer portal window? And I think his answer was basically, I don't know that there is an ideal time frame because it is chaos, and we all
Between
understand
football and academics too.
Yeah, and for a coach, right? Because they're balancing so many things at every point in the year. Whether we're talking bowl prep now, obviously this week is probably the calm before the storm as it relates to bowl prep and the portal. But then you jump right back into spring practice, recruiting, spring practice, summer conditioning, all that, and there are downtimes, but there's not many. So we're going to get right to we got Landon and we got Ryan waiting on hold. We'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors once more, our final commercial break of the show. You're watching from the Hawkeye of the Storm. This is Hawkeye Hangout. If you're interested in calling in, the number is 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601. We'll talk to you in about 60 seconds. Let me introduce you to one of the proud supporters of From the Hawkeye of the Storm, Iowa floor covering down in Bondurant. Now, for the last year and a half, you've heard me talk about this great company in the heart of central Iowa. They've got their tough core, click together, 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring, great for you DIYers out there. But even if you're just a contractor or you need a different type of flooring, they've got you covered, whether it be tile showers, carpet. Give Iowa Floor Covering a chance to serve you better and serve your flooring needs. Visit them online at iowafloorcovering.com. That's iowafloorcovering.com, or you can give them a call at 515-379-7000. That's 515-379-7000. Thank you to Iowa Floor Covering in Bondurant. Straight from the man cave, Kinnick Under the Kitchen. Authentic, original player artwork available for Hawkeye fans across the country. Now, in addition to the classic sign prints of Hawkeye greats like Chuck Long, Torrey Taylor, and Cooper DeJean, more authentic prints are coming, including current Iowa football stars Cade McNamara, Luke Lachey, and Xavier Wampa. There are so many options available. They make great gifts. Plus, your purchase benefits the athletes themselves and your favorite Hawkeye program from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Visit Under the Kitchen on Facebook, visit the stand each year at Fry Fest, or check out their website, underthekitchen.square.site. Again, that's underthekitchen.square.site. Check out Under the Kitchen today and get your authentic, original Hawkeye print. We are back here from the Hawkeye of the Storm, our National Signing Day edition of Hawkeye Hangout. We have not ran through the entire class. We've talked about some specific athletes. We heard from Brad Fitzgibbon here earlier in the show. And for people who are wondering, in past years, I have hosted a live, 3 to 4 hour show where we basically have a bunch of the signees on during that live show. But we usually do that during the afternoon when more players are available. I know some guys are, in the evenings, especially on this day, very busy. So we reached out to Brad. We reached out to a couple others that we're going to be talking to later in the week. But stay tuned because we'll be talking to a handful of these signees from today on future episodes of our podcast. So stay tuned on that. Again, if you're interested in chatting about the class, you're free to call in and ask a question or a comment based on your observations. But if you missed any of our talk, I know James called in earlier and we talked a little bit about what Iowa has at tight end with Thomas Meyer and Mason Woods and Eli Johnson. And, of course, Jose Epinesa. Carson Cooney's an underrated kid out of Oswego, Illinois, that I really like. Terrence Smith with his size at receiver. Obviously, the foundation of the class has to be at quarterback with Jimmy Sullivan. Tim Lester was not involved with him initially, but he's stayed committed, and Iowa has stayed committed to him. Joey Van Wetzinga, he's got a brother who's already been a part of this program in Iowa, his older brother, Rusty. who actually happens to be Rusty Jr. Rusty's dad, is a coach of that program up at Pleasant Valley, or I should say down at Pleasant Valley, Iowa. So many different storylines to follow. And of course, Iowa got a late ad today, and Olante Dean, an Armwood High School, Plant City, Florida Sefner kid down in the state of Florida, down in the Sunshine State. And of course, Iowa also added a couple of Loyola kids, one being a walk-on, the son of Pat Fitzgerald, who will be a quarterback, Andrew McPherson also, who's a safety in the class. Lots of interesting people. There always are. Very interesting athletes. It's a smaller class. What did we say? Like 14, 15?
15
players.
15
signings. Yeah, so we're here to talk about it. And if you missed our little chat about Cade Moss here about 20 minutes ago, you're free to rewind later. And all of our shows are always available on Spotify, Apple, Google. It would really be helpful, folks, if you went over to your favorite podcast platform and gave From the Hawkeye of the Storm a 5-star rating, gave it a positive review, and became a part of audio listenership as well. Again, that's From the Hawkeye of the Storm, Apple. I know Google's now actually transformed into YouTube podcasts, but also Spotify, Anchor, all those, Stitcher, all of those, a big part of what we do here, our audio availability as well. Let's go to our next caller. We've got Landon, who's been on hold for quite some time. Landon, welcome.
Hey guys, how are you guys doing tonight?
We're doing good, Landon. Appreciate you being patient, sticking around.
Oh yeah, dude. Oh yeah. So I just want to talk about two things. I won't take too much of your time. I want to just talk a little bit more about McNamara, and then I do want to talk a little bit about 2025 because, I've been really good at the last couple of years predicting what the Hawkeyes record will be, and I'm hopefully going to get my prediction right this year with them being 9-4 if they could win their bowl game, but I don't know about that one. But what topic do you want to start with first, McNamara or 2025?
Well, let's get the McNamara thing out of the way.
Yeah, let's get the McNamara thing. I agree. So, you told, one thing you told me is, I'm only 14 and you told me that you're double my age. You were 14 when I was born, right? And so in my time watching Iowa football, I've only ever seen one good quarterback, and that was Nate Stanley. And I remember 2 years ago, and Nate Stanley back then in 2018, 2019, I didn't think he was that good of a quarterback. I mean, we still thought he was good, but I mean, he would get sacked a lot and everything. But here's my thing is that, ever since I've started watching Iowa football, I've always felt like, we never had a quarterback. And 2 years ago when McNamara came here, I thought something was going to be different, and I think we all did, right? It was probably a year ago around now. I don't remember what date it was, but it was a year ago in the first week of December when, he committed here. And I think we were all going crazy because we thought, we got that quarterback. And I just think looking back at it 2 years later, like what a bust, as someone who lives out in Colorado, I think of the Russell Wilson trade. Obviously, like we can't trade in college, but this was kind of similar to what I just experienced being a Broncos fan with the Russell Wilson trade. A lot of similar stuff, right? A quarterback that, promised that he said, I'm going to take Iowa to a Big Ten championship. Well, I mean, technically he was on a team that went to the Big Ten championship, but got shut out by Michigan by playing zero offense.
Landon, let me just use this platform to say, I just hope people keep saying this offense is going to be crap. Please just keep saying that. Just
let's lower the expectations so then when they break them, we're. Oh man!
Well, it's that comment, by the way, too. Like that type of stuff. Like I'm not saying that was a horrible thing to say, but Cade's persona and his reputation as being a little bit of a diva did not help the situation because nobody hates Spencer Petras around here. Nobody does. Yeah. Nobody hates Deacon Hill. None of us hate Deacon Hill. We have emotion towards Cade McNamara because of the performance and because of the attitude.
Listen, I don't have any of this strong emotion toward Cade McNamara, Kyle.
Okay, I'm speaking on behalf of Iowa fans. Iowa fans have animosity right now towards Cade McNamara. There's no. I mean, you might not, but
I don't understand. Why do people have all this animosity toward Cade specifically?
Because the way I don't watch all the press conferences.
He has his reputation and personality, a lot of NIL money. We don't know the exact amount, but a lot of NIL money that went towards a very underwhelming performance. Yes. And some very, very, the Iowa State game, you can argue, flipped on its head when Cade McNamara made a terrible decision. There were a couple of those games that he really cost them. And then you add to it the letter that I've got up on my screen in front of me. I have every intention to play versus Nebraska next Friday night. If you have every intention to play versus Nebraska next Friday night and you announce that you're transferring a week and a half later, you did not have an intention of playing in that game. I'm sorry, you didn't. And not only that, but if you're healthy enough to consider playing in the Nebraska game and you really value the Iowa program, you should go out on senior day. That's my opinion.
Exactly. And, I'm going to point sorry, Corey, I'm going to point this out. 2 years ago against Nebraska, I was at that game. I made the drive from Colorado. Spencer Petras was the starter, but he came out on senior day, and there was this whole article about how you were supposed to clap for Petras when he came out. Obviously, he was healthy. He got injured on the second series, but there was all this buzz about, we got to clap for Petras when he comes out. And Petras came out. Obviously, he was healthy. He was going to start, and he came out, and I was there. Everybody clapped for him. And just like you said about McNamara, even you were just showing a commercial where they were saying McNamara gets paid all that NIL money to get a portrait of him. Who wants a portrait of Cade McNamara? He's selling more portraits than the touchdowns he threw. I mean,
real quick. Okay, now let me respond to everything that was just said. All right, because let me make something abundantly clear. I'm not defending Cade's performance. I'm not defending how Cade has handled himself. I think it's ridiculous, and I think it's classless not to go out and be honored and support your fellow seniors on senior day. However, let me say this. Be mad at the people who gave him the money. It's like people who are mad about Kirk Ferentz. Kirk Ferentz is making $8 million a year. Kirk Ferentz has a good agent. You don't. Be mad at the people who negotiated how much Cade got to come here. Be mad at the fact that Iowa evaluated him as a guy who was worth such and such an amount. I guess that's where I look at it. And the other thing that rubs me the wrong way about the Spencer Petras thing, I think it's great that he's went on to have success at Utah State, but I had to listen to 3 years of him acting like a politician in front of cameras. And I got so worn out and sick of it that I just, nothing against him personally, but the quarterback room stunk. He didn't have much behind him. However, we praise the guy because he turned the other cheek against all the social media backlash that he received. And by the way, there was plenty of criticism and social media backlash that he received as a quarterback at Iowa, just like Deacon Hill and just like Cade McNamara. Now, maybe you're right. Maybe it's to a different level. But there was something about, and we always compared how Brian Ferentz spoke and how Spencer Petras spoke. It almost sounded like they were the same person speaking. He just always gave me the feeling like he was a politician, the way he spoke.
With Petras, I just don't know what he was supposed to do, though. That's with Petras. Like, what? Because he's not going to say he's not going to say we suck and the room sucks. But he also didn't put himself out there and say, "Oh, we're going to be so good." He didn't make statements like this.
I don't hate. That's my point. I don't hate any of them. First of all, I don't hate people. I don't hate any of the players.
Yeah, hate's a strong word, but there is emotion there.
Well,
there's like with the fan base, there's more emotion. Do you at least agree with that? There's more emotion with McNamara right now than there was when Deacon Hill announced he was leaving and Petras and all that.
Maybe
stuff.
with the fan base, but not with me. That's all I'm saying. I don't like Spencer Petras any more than I like Cade McNamara. I think they were both subpar quarterbacks at Iowa. I don't think either one of them. Cade didn't deserve the money he got, and Spencer didn't deserve to start 3 years at a Big Ten program. That's what So maybe money just gets under people's skin more, and I get it. I understand that. But in my opinion, neither one of them deserved what they got as it relates. And they don't deserve the harassment either. So there's there's the balance there. They don't deserve to be. Can we agree they don't deserve to be harassed?
They don't deserve to be harassed. I would say Cade deserves to be criticized. I don't think that's unfair.
You can criticize all you want. I have no problem with criticism. I've been critical of him. I've been calling for Brendan Sullivan to start in place of him all season or much of the season. But you're telling me neither one of you guys thought that it was ridiculous that Spencer Petras was starting for 3 straight years? I
thought it was insane, but I blame Brian Ferentz. I didn't blame him.
Yeah, and yet you're blaming Cade McNamara for accepting a big paycheck.
Well, I blame Kirk Ferentz as a part of that too. But when people, I'm just saying from a pure association standpoint, when people give $20 to the Swarm and they see Cade McNamara get $600,000 and then they see him throw 6 touchdowns against 5 picks and have a 37 QBR for the year, people get upset. That's all. Whether it's rightly or wrongly, they say I donated the money. Some of that money, a portion of that money went to him, and he was garbage. And then he put this stupid statement out saying, I intend to play. I'm doing everything I can to get back on the field. And then he doesn't play. He announces he's going to transfer and he doesn't walk out on senior day. I think people have a right to be upset.
Here's what I'll say. Don't be if you're going to be mad at Cade McNamara, don't be mad at Cade McNamara because he accepted money and then proceeded to suck at Iowa. Be mad at Cade McNamara because he
of the senior day
season with his team.
Yeah.
Be mad about that, because if you're not going to blame Spencer Petras for starting 3 years, then you can't blame Cade McNamara for accepting $1 million plus to come to Iowa, because anybody and everybody in that same situation would have done the exact same thing. And he wasn't trying to suck, right? Just like Spencer Petras wasn't
And
trying.
by the way, if he would have come back and play or tried to play against Nebraska, or at least been on the sidelines and gone through senior day, I wouldn't feel this way, because my feeling going into the middle of the season was, I don't love his demeanor. I've never loved his demeanor, but I did feel for him a little bit, because he blew his knee up at Michigan, and then he blew his knee up again against Michigan State in the end zone last year. And it just felt like, okay, we paid him the money. He's not performing, but a part of that is, number one, the offense that he was transferred into, and number two, he's blown his knee up twice. So there's some sympathy there. But when you do this stuff and you put out these, they're ridiculous accusations and they're all 100% false, and I want to play on senior, I'm doing everything I can to get back on the field, and blah, 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 blah. This is the stuff that takes that sympathy away.
Oh yeah. Cade, whenever you talk about Cade, it makes me angry. But let's talk some 2025, because Iowa quarterbacks, we can talk about them for hours, but what we got to do is we got to pull Nate Stanley off the couch, and we got to take Amir Smith-Marset out of the NFL and get Nate Stanley to throw a long ball again to Amir Smith-Marset. That's what we got to do, and the Hawkeyes are good again at offense. So
I would prefer Beathard to Tavon Smith.
I don't remember Iowa football in 2015. I was 5. So I mean, I'm that young. But yeah, guys, I want to talk a little bit about 2025, because my Iowa memory isn't as good until like 2017. But I kind of feel like next year could be a 2017 season, right? Except we're living 2016 right now, basically, right? Iowa's 8-4. They just beat Nebraska. They're going to a bowl game now. Might lose, might be 8-5, might get beat like they did against Florida, pretty bad. I mean, possibility. So next year got a horrible. Like a schedule that, Iowa hasn't even had combined in the last 3 years. And that's kind of what they had in 2017, with playing Ohio State at home, with playing Penn State at home, going still on the road to into Iowa State. Obviously, probably a harder schedule next year, but I really see this as being either a hit or miss season. It's either 2017 or it's either the last 3 odd seasons where we're going to win 10 games. It's hit or miss.
The other thing that happened, because Landon, you and I discussed this last time you called in. 2016 is a good example of a letdown year. 2010 is another example of a letdown year, and they followed that up with 7-6 in 2011, and then 4-8 in 2012. So let's hope it's not that, because that was a 3-year slide. And you're right about 2017. They bounced back in a huge way after the dip in 2016, and they lost a lot in that 2016 draft. Now, I don't know how many guys got drafted. I could run through a few, Beathard being one, Kittle being another, Desmond King being another. But they're going to be losing a lot this year as well. And the difference, as we said earlier, is they have the opportunity to go to the portal and rebuild more than they ever have been. But it's also an arms race. Everybody else is trying to do the same thing.
Oh, yeah, and that makes a big difference. But I definitely, I would love, and this is what I think, guys, we got to appreciate, is that, what team did Iowa play this year that was ranked at home? I don't think they played any ranked opponents. Next year, we're going to have a chance to have, one of those Kennick Magic games. I'm sure one of those home games will be a night game on NBC or something like that, where we'll have a chance. Iowa upsets, get to rush the field. We haven't got to rush the field since 21. I like those opportunities. Iowa tends to keep it close at home. Even against Michigan in 22, the last time, I honestly think that was the last time we played a ranked team at home, because Iowa State wasn't ranked when we played them. I think Michigan in 22 was the last time we played a ranked team at home. And obviously we couldn't run the ball, but it was like a 13-point loss to a team that made it to the playoffs. And that's what I like, is that, guys, we get to have 3 ranked opponents at least at home. I assume Indiana will be ranked. At least I don't know when we'll play him, but I think that's going to be a good opportunity, guys, and that will be fun. I think look forward to 2025 as a year that, hey, what if we win one of those 3 games, get an opportunity to rush the field, get one of those types of games.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. They have you're right about that. They have not played hardly any games against major opponents, and have not beaten any major opponents since 2021 when they rushed the field against Penn State. So
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a moment that they need to have again. And I'm looking for the list right now. I know I had. Let me see if I can find this. It's been like, I don't know. It's been like something like 15 games against teams that were ranked where they've actually gotten a win against a team that finished the year too. So like even the ranked wins, like the ranked win that they had against Penn State in 21. Penn State, their season
They fell off after that. Yeah, they lost like five straight.
They finished like 7-6 or something. And so, and Iowa State was the same in 21. Indiana was the same. Like those all in the moment looked like great wins against solid opponents. And you go back and you look at those wins and you're like, Iowa State finished 7-5. Indiana was horrible. Penn State was very average after that. And, I mean, it's been several years since they've had a win against that, 2016 Michigan, 2017 Ohio State. Everybody knows the list.
So then are you saying that 2017 Ohio State is the last time Iowa's beat a team that finished ranked and was ranked at Kinnick? Because
no, it was Minnesota. I think 2019 Minnesota.
Teams. Oh, Minnesota in 19. Yeah, that was the last time.
Minnesota in 19 was the last one. Just off. I have through 2020. None of the teams through 2020, but in 2019, Minnesota definitely finished ranked.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of a couple more questions before I get off. I do see this year, next year being some of those things. I would right now give it. I would give it either two things, and I think it's not going to be an 8-4 season. I think it's either going to be two things. It's either going to be a 7-5 season like 2017, or it will be a 9-3 season. And Corey, if I'm right about this, man, I mean, you probably won't remember me talking in December of 2024, but I say if it's a 9-3 season, we're going to lose at USC because Iowa can't win on the West Coast on the road. So we'll lose at USC, we'll lose the Oregon home game, and we'll always lose to a game that you never think we're going to lose. We could beat Penn State and beat Indiana next year, and we'll end up losing, at home against Minnesota or on the road at Wisconsin when we thought we were a good team. So I personally think that I think we will beat one of those three teams. I think we can beat Penn State, maybe. I mean, with Kinnick Magic. So if it's 9-3, we do beat Penn State, but we're going to lose at Wisconsin or something like that. And then if it's 7-5, we'll lose Penn State and Oregon and Wisconsin and USC and maybe even Indiana. But that would just be, I don't know, man.
If that 9-3 season comes to pass, I will be a very happy fan. We'll put it that way.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Because 2019 they were 9-3 and they lost all their games to ranked opponents. They lost one home game to a ranked opponent. Yeah, one home game out of those three losses to a ranked opponent.
If you want me to be a glass half full guy,
yeah, give me your glass half full.
Let me tell you what I think about that 25 schedule. We've been talking about how much of a gauntlet it is. Here is the positive take, the eternal optimist looking at the 2025 schedule. They've played very well in the last decade at Iowa State. Okay, that's first. They get all of their more difficult games at home. USC was not good this year.
Not good.
There's a rumor going on. Have you guys heard the rumor about Lincoln Riley potentially being pursued? Who was that was potentially pursuing Lincoln Riley that I saw earlier today?
Was it NFL?
Anybody else see this? Let me find
I
it.
haven't heard about it.
Was it college? I thought it was NFL.
It was UCF. Lincoln Riley was a reported target for UCF, as some in the industry wonder if Riley wants a soft exit from USC. That was posted 7 hours ago by CBS Sports writer Richard Johnson and Cameron Salerno. And that would be listen, Chip Kelly just did this a year ago. Now, that would be a bombshell if Lincoln Riley left for a place like Central Florida. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but things aren't as jolly in Southern Cal right now as they were a year ago. So
things weren't jolly at UCLA either this year, though.
No, and then Iowa went out there and lost. So I get it, but I'm just saying that's a road game. I'd rather play at USC on the road than I'd rather play there than in Eugene. I'd rather play there than at Columbus or certainly at State College, at Happy Valley. So I'll start there, and then they play Oregon at home, Penn State at home. We mentioned Minnesota, Indiana, Michigan State. I mean, yeah, Oregon's going to be a bear. Penn State's a bear. Indiana, they may be a bear, but remember, they also had a year under Allen in 2020 where they looked like they were going like this, and then they came to Kinnick and they went like this.
Yeah.
And Michael Penix transfers
Well,
out.
they have a lot of transfers from the school that Cignetti came from, and a lot of those guys are aging out of the program this year.
So believe me, I'm not predicting 9-3, 10-2, but if you want me to be an eternal optimist, I'd say their most difficult games are in Kinnick, and the ones that you can see a route, a path to victory in those difficult road games because of the history at Iowa State, because of the instability at USC, and the last time they went up to Camp Randall, they won.
All right, guys. Last thing I just want to say before I'll get out of here. Just well, kind of two things here. I think this is kind of reminds me like a 4-year stretch, right? So back in 2020, Iowa State had a really good season, right? And then 21, they fell off. Indiana had the same really good season back then. So it's just like, we're reliving 4 years ago. And we played Penn State in 21. We played Indiana in 21 when we played Iowa State. And we're playing all of them at the same location. So, I don't think it would be a 21 type season. But, guys, I mean, you know how much I love odd years, Corey. I talked about it all the time. And if we can make it 5 of the last 6 odd years winning 10 games, I mean, that would be great, man. But I'm excited, guys. I don't like the negativity around this fan base because I feel like with Kirk he's so unpredictable because he'll have years. Well, you're like this year where you're gonna be like, oh, we can easily go 11-1 or 10-2, and then we end 8-4, possibly even 8-5. And next year, predict 6-6, predict 7-5, and let's see the 9-3 or 10-2.
Absolutely, Landon. Appreciate you calling in, sir, and we'll look forward to you being a part of the show moving forward.
Man.
They come.
Talking odd years.
Okay.
It's almost that time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the call.
Thanks, Landon.
All right. A couple things in the chat before we get to Ryan and then Corey. Lemansky wants to chime in on that shot by Josh Dix last night. I have not watched your show back with Gary yet. I'm trying to think. I tuned in for a couple minutes, but I didn't get done with the game until like 1 a.m. Partially because when you watch a game back on Peacock, you have to watch all the ads. Like they just plaster you with ads. It's amazing. At least with Fox Sports and Fox Sports is Big Ten. ESPN, you can skip past a lot of those. You cannot do that with Peacock. So, but yeah, what a shot last night by Josh Dix. My concerns, to be quite frank, leaving Kansas City a couple of weeks ago, leaving the T-Mobile Center, my concerns with this team remain the same. They don't shoot they're not shooting free throws well. They get killed on the glass. It's going to be hard for them to be consistent in this conference if they don't shoot free throws well, because they're going to get beat on the glass most nights, and that the defense is going to be below average most nights. Yeah. So if you have even a subpar shooting night, like to your standards, you've got to make free throws, man. And they were not good.
They had a subpar shooting half, and they lost the half by 12 or 13 points.
Yeah,
against a Northwestern team that was not a team anybody thought was going to compete for anything in the Big Ten. The only thing I would say, and the only kind of positive spin we had on it last night, was number one, great to end the 0-3 skid to start off Big Ten play that they've been on the last couple of years, where they've started 0-2 or 0-3 several years in a row. And number two, they have an opportunity going to Michigan here before the kind of 3-week hiatus of Big Ten play, where if they could win that game, they could go into that break, I think, feeling really, really good, because you go into the break 2-0, basically just have to split the conference games from that point on to likely make the tournament, I would say. I mean, if you split the rest of the 18 games that would be remaining, you'd be 11-9. So that'd be bubble already, even if you're just 500 the rest of the way. And if you pick up one on top of that, you're almost a slam dunk to be in. So there's still a lot of concerns about the team, but just from pure conference standings perspective, getting through that game was huge.
Agree. You cannot afford to lose many games at home.
Nope. No, because it is hard to win on the road.
And they had 0.8 seconds, and that's what they needed, and they got it done. So survive in advance, as they say. Lemansky, appreciate the super chat. It does not cost a dime or a dollar to be a good teammate. Not a dollar. Thanks, Kyle. He's directing.
True.
His thanks to you, Lemansky, or Kyle. So appreciate that, Lemansky. Appreciate you being here. Let's go to
and that goes to Lemansky's point there, and kind of what I'm saying is, if you have people that have talked to Cade or been around Cade, not saying he's a bad guy, but the feeling a lot of people get, the feeling that I get, is he's not the typical Kirk Ferentz teammate. That's all.
Yeah. Well, we heard all about how great of a teammate he was when he first got to Iowa, Kyle.
We did hear all about that, and I yeah.
But what have I said since the very beginning? I've said he comes off as a jerk.
He does, 100%. He comes off as a little bit of a diva, a little bit of a kind of too cool for school.
But I again, this is where I've been saying that since day one, since he got here. I'm like, well, maybe that's what Iowa needs, but he comes off as a jerk. He comes off like he's got a big ego, and you're right. That is not typically the Kirk Ferentz type of guy. And I'll give Spencer Petras credit for this. I was critical of him earlier for kind of coming across to me as a politician, and maybe he would have kept the job regardless of how he came across. But it felt like he was a politician throughout those 3 years, but he did carry himself in I think, a more mature and upstanding way. The fact that he went through senior day after all the criticism, not just for one season or 2 seasons, but for 3 years, is impressive. And he did graduate from Iowa.
And by the way, the biggest thing of all of that for me, as far as his reputation and how I felt about him, what did he do when he got benched or got the minor injury and Alex Padilla came into the game? What did he do?
I have no idea.
He put on a hat and he coached from the sidelines. He was interactive. He was involved, right?
Again, if Cade's got a concussion.
Well, I'm not saying anything about Cade. I'm saying I liked that Spencer did that. Regardless of Cade, if Cade never existed at Iowa, the fact that he did not disconnect after getting benched, like not just Cade, but so many other players, when they get benched, Miller Moss got benched and immediately he's gone, right? Spencer got benched or whatever, got injured, whatever they put out. I can't remember there was some debate about whether it was performance related or whether it was injury related. But when he got yanked from the game, he put a red hat on, he took an iPad, and he helped Alex Padilla through the rest of the game. I like that.
No, don't blame me for that one bit. Brehawk65 says, you're a good man, not a goat. Thank you. I'd rather be a good man than have someone tell me that I'm a goat. I'm far from that. So Cyhawk C Money. I'm not already giving up on Sully. They're going to need to get somebody in the portal. I'm saying if you're going to swing big for a guy who can also give you more than 1 year and who's more mobile. This kid from A&M, I don't know if there's any substance to the rumors there. That kid's an athlete, and he's more like a Brendan Sullivan style of athlete. And I really do. I have high hopes for Brendan next year, Kyle. I think he can be the starter. I think he should be. It should be expected that he is the starter in 2025. I don't expect the starter to be somebody from the portal. Maybe somebody in the portal comes here and beats him out, or he leaves. Yeah. But I expect Brendan Sullivan to be the starter in 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, everybody has this UCLA game stuck in their heads. I saw so many people that were just out on Brendan Sullivan after one game in which the offensive line was crap and the offense just didn't look good and he got injured. Like, that one game does not mean he's going to be garbage in 2025. Having Brendan Sullivan as your quarterback next year is not the end of the world. It just isn't.
Let's go to our next caller. We've got Ryan with us. Ryan, welcome to the show, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing good. How are you?
All right. I have to say, I've got some tissues for you guys. It seems like feels kind of like a Cade McNamara funeral call. It's kind of how this is starting to feel.
Well, I'll tell you what, real quick, can I just say this? I do hear that Spencer Petras might get another year of eligibility. Ryan, would you be interested in pursuing the Aggie standout?
You mean the guy from?
Would you be interested in bringing Spencer Petras back to Iowa City for a 8th year?
No, of course not. But right. I'll just start by saying I, like everybody else, pretty much was head over heels when Cade announced he was coming to Iowa. Because let's face it, even though Michigan has superior athletes, he still had to make the throws. And he won a Big Ten championship as the quarterback, making the throws. And as you well know, Corey, I'm extremely down on Iowa offense, Iowa's inability to develop a quarterback. we don't even, our wide receivers at this point don't even have a heartbeat. So, when you say quarterbacks go to die, it's been that way for a while.
I wouldn't say that the wide receivers don't have a heartbeat right now.
Well, we have absolutely no wide receiver game. A little bit of Jacob Gill this year, not near enough, but we really haven't had a wide receiver game in many, many, many moons, right? I mean, 2011 was DJK and Marvin McNutt, and we've had very little. When was our last 1,000-yard receiver? McNutt? 2011? I mean,
it's been a long time.
I mean, you get 500 yards, and that's an outstanding season at Iowa. It's frustrating. So I kind of liken it, and I kind of wish Coach Close, of all people, was on this show, because those of you who remember, I'm going to make an analogy. Dick Bennett. Do you know who that is, Corey? He was the Wisconsin basketball coach, took them to the Final Four in 2000, came back the next year, coached 3 games and quit, and ended up at Washington State for 3 years, I think it was. But anyway, he took them to a Final Four. That Wisconsin team was winning 58-50, 60-48, real low scoring. They would snooze you to death. Played great defense, absolute boring as hell offense. And that's really Iowa football right now. Now, don't get me wrong. I like winning, okay? Of course I do. But when you're playing a 6-5 Nebraska team and 44% of your plays was one play in the entire game, you have 164 total yards of offense. That is not going to get it done in any world. Yeah, granted, our defense played its tail off, and frankly, so did Nebraska's. But I'm really, really tired of this style of play. It is just, it's very, very hard to watch. It just is. And I mean, our last big game that we won, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but our last big regular season game that we won was 2021 against Penn State in Kinnick.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep.
I mean,
and how did they win that? They threw the ball down the field.
Well, let me answer the question first, Ryan, because they did win. They have won big games, but not against great opponents.
Oh, I'm talking about the big games, If we played, Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, darn well it'd be 35-0, 35-3.
Well, like
maybe
I was
110 yards of total offense. That would be the case because it's been the case ever since. In the big games, I'm talking when you're playing the ranked opponent and you're on national TV. Frankly, we embarrass
Ryan, not to cut you off here, Corey, I had this note. I can't remember if I said this in the Ohio State game post-game show. Did I mention that it's been 75 offensive drives since Iowa had a touchdown in a ranked game with the game within 3 scores? They've gone 75 consecutive drives without scoring a touchdown with the game within 3 scores. The only touchdowns they've scored in the last 75 drives have all been when the game's been outside reach.
Yeah, that Ohio State score was 35.
Ohio State score was late,
and
then they got shut out in the 3 games against Tennessee, Michigan, Penn State. The only touchdown, and then the last one, the Ohio State touchdown on the road in 21 or 22, that was a defensive touchdown on the Joe Evans sack, scoop and score. And then the scores that they had against Michigan at home, those were both late when the game was out of reach. And then the previous one was against Kentucky in 2021.
And Iowa as a program is kind of uniquely positioned because we go to bowl games every single year. And we're good enough to do that. We're definitely, for the most part, good for a minimum 8 wins. And we have been for a long time, and that's great. But how many schools would that kind of performance against the big boys fly? Let's face it, Kirk would have been fired 5 times over at most Power 5 schools doing that. Let's be honest.
winning.
You wouldn't survive. You wouldn't survive at an.
He would have been fired at Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan.
Those are
like
not
those
Any
type of schools,
SEC
but those
school
are not-
outside of
that's not Iowa.
Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Those are not most Power Fives.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the Purdue's. I'm not talking about Northwestern.
So
I'm talking about
powers.
the teams.
Yeah, most powers he would have been.
Nebraska won't put up with it, and obviously Wisconsin doesn't put up with it. Frankly, Wisconsin was better than us with Paul Chryst. Let's face it, they were. As much as that makes me sick to say.
Ryan, you're I feel like you're trying to get me going.
You know what I want? I want a Kirk Ferentz debate between Ryan and Corey.
I like Kirk.
Not you, Corey. We've got Corey that
Kirk.
we have in the
I
queue.
like Kirk, but I guess where I'm going with some of this is we're talking about the A&M kid as a possibility. I don't know if there's any interest there or not. Miller Moss, I hear, might have some. I guess I'm not going to get excited about any quarterback until I see it because of what the trauma by Cade McNamara. I mean, let's face it. We all thought Cade McNamara was going to be the first good quarterback we've had in quite some time, certainly since Nate Stanley, and it didn't work out, not even close. And it's hard to find the evidence that we can develop quarterbacks, and it's hard to find the evidence that we have the ability to be a decent offense in the air. As much as I do like the ground game, you can't do it on the ground alone. You got to be more balanced, and we're extremely one-dimensional.
Tim Lester's been here 1 year, Ryan. Why are we taking everything and putting it in a silo and saying Iowa can't develop quarterbacks?
Well, it's called PTSD, Corey. We watched Spencer Petras. We watched Deacon Hill do nothing but wrong.
What I will say to Ryan's point,
we couldn't go to Marco Lainez once until halftime of the Tennessee game.
What I'll say to back Ryan up here, I do agree. Tim Lester's been here 1 year. We got to give him some time. As of right now, they've thrown for less yards this year than they did last year. And I know they have one game to go, but it's going to be close.
It's totally irrelevant because they have a dominant run game. I don't understand why people keep bringing up the pass offense and saying,
but
you're not going for any yards. They have the number one rush offense in the conference. So it does.
And what happens, Corey?
Negligible.
What happened in UCLA? What happened in Nebraska?
What happened against UCLA is
they bottled it up. They stuffed the box and bottled up the one and only threat we had.
I'm not debating that. What I
would say is if in the moments that they needed the pass they executed, that would be fine. But they didn't execute when they needed to throw the ball.
And you got to have a quarterback that can throw the damn ball. You just do. I mean, not against
the run game got shut down against UCLA. They needed the pass game, and the pass game was nowhere to be found. With Marco, or not with Marco in the game, with Sullivan in the game until he left the game. And you can say, oh, Jackson Stratton came in late, but the pass game was nowhere to be found. Same thing with Michigan State. There was no pass game to speak of.
I just don't see, until I see it, where we can really feel good about any quarterback until we see it. I mean, even Nathan Stanley was bad in some of the better defenses. I mean, you watch those Wisconsin games. They were some of the worst quarterback play games I've ever seen. And all in all, he was a good quarterback. I mean, especially by today's standards.
They all have bad nights.
Can I say something?
Go for it.
Am I allowed? So we can have this debate, and I'm not prepared to have it because I need to have data in front of me. But when you have the number one rush offense in the country, or excuse me, in the conference, you're going to have much less of a need to attack downfield. They won basically every game that they did win. They won in large part due to the run game, with the exception of being Nebraska, and it was really the big run by Caleb, and then a couple of opportune plays by defense and special teams, which is how they beat Nebraska every year. But my point is, the two losses that there was no excuse to lose those games. First of all, are we really going to blame the pass offense in those 2 games with as bad as the defense was against Michigan State and at UCLA? And then on top of that, who was playing quarterback against Michigan State? I believe it was a guy that you were just ripping on, Cade McNamara.
Yeah.
And against UCLA, Brendan Sullivan played how long in that game before he got jacked?
Brendan had a bad game. I wasn't in favor of taking him out until I realized it was an injury.
Yeah, but before he got hurt and was taken out, he also hit a deep ball to Jacob Gill. It was like one of the longest actual pass plays over the top that we've seen. It felt like in years.
Correct.
So I'm just saying the pass offense wasn't called upon. And when it was called upon, they didn't have the horses at that point in the season to really, I don't believe, to judge Tim Lester in year 1. That's all I'm saying.
I'm not judging Tim Lester. I think he's a massive upgrade. I really do. I'm also saying we have to learn how to throw the damn football more than a 2-yard screen pass. Hey, and that Caleb Johnson play was a 2-yard screen pass, so it was all Caleb for 70 more yards.
And for the record, they will throw the ball more effectively. Like, they will. It's not even a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I think we can all agree on this as it relates to offensive mind, experience, pedigree, resume. Do we realize how much of an upgrade 1 year in Tim Lester is from Brian Ferentz?
Well, you look at the points per game alone.
Absolutely.
I mean, it wasn't the defense. Yeah, it wasn't the defense putting all those points up. I mean, we absolutely piss-pounded Wisconsin, 42 points.
Critical down conversion offense. They were not good against Nebraska, but the numbers, if you throw out the Nebraska game, the numbers were significantly better this year. They were much better in the red zone, specifically once they put Brendan Sullivan in at quarterback for at least red zone plays. So I don't know. I guess I look at the micro of the different battles that it felt like Iowa won or overcame because there were so many things that needed to be addressed during the offseason and not enough time for Tim to do it. And, obviously he's not, most of the guys that he's trying to utilize are not his guys anyways. So I just think we're going to see a much different pass offense in 24 or 25, and they're not going to have Caleb Johnson to rely on. So they're going to have more opportunity to shine.
I mean, we'll still be in good hands with Moulton and Jazz, I believe, as a 1-2 punch. I'm not too worried there. And I definitely, I'm putting all my hopes in that Tim Lester, he's got a track record of being a good quarterback developer. I'm thinking our quarterback next year very well may not be on the roster. I'm also trying to think in terms of recruits. When I say recruit, I also mean transfer portal. Is our awful track record in the last, for the most part of a decade, going to be enough to scare somebody off? Or are they going to look at it like Cade did when he came in, took it as a big challenge? I believe he said, "Please tell us we still suck," or something like that.
Yep.
And maybe.
I'm happy to tell them they sucked. I'm happy to tell them that 2023 offense was as bad as it got.
So basically then, are you looking at next year's quarterback situation as Brendan as the clear number one, transfer portal guy comes in, maybe has two plus years of eligibility and competes with Marco for the number 2? Or do you think Marco leaves?
I have not had a conversation with anybody in Marco's camp, full disclosure. So I'm just, first of all, I think it's unfair that so many of these athletes are, this time of year, they're all going to get bombarded with media people just swarming them with, are you staying? Are you going? So in general, and people have asked me, what do you know about this and that? I've not reached out to hardly anybody over the last week about decision making. I don't know that I've ever actually asked anybody that question along those lines. But my hunch with Marco is that he may explore other options. That's my hunch. And so if that happens, Ryan, what I think will happen is Brendan Sullivan returns. Jimmy Sullivan's in as a freshman. and then you're probably going to bring in at least one or two. If Jackson Stratton sticks, then it's going to be, it could end up being a room of Brendan Sullivan, portal guy, Jimmy Sullivan, Stratton, and Pat Fitzgerald's kid. That might be the room in 2020. And I know that's two walk-ons. They may give Stratton a scholarship. I mean, we're all working with the same. I don't know that scholarship, obviously the roster limit is what we need to be looking at anyways. So whether he's on scholarship or not, they got to figure out how to get to probably 5 quarterbacks. And, then they got to figure out how they're going to deal with the numbers across the board to get to a place where they can have 5 quarterbacks, because they got too many players as it is.
Well, and then, we spent the entire call more or less talking about quarterbacks in the offense, but the factor for next year that we don't talk enough about is, what is our defense going to look like? We literally lose everybody except Wampa, and that's it, right? Well, I guess, is Llewellyn back next year?
Llewellyn is back next year. Let's see, who else is back? Graves, assuming he comes back.
Graves, that's who I was thinking of. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we have 3 starters back next year.
I mean, the young DBs are all back. Hopefully, like Deshaun Lee, John Nestor, TJ Hall. Hopefully,
Jalen Watson.
And Jalen Watson's going to be in the mix as well. Hopefully, one of those guys, 2 of those guys, really latch on and play well. But yeah, they lose Schulte, they lose all the linebackers, they lose Herkett, they lose Y.A. Black. So we'll see.
That's going to be a concern.
Yeah. And they weren't very good this year to Iowa standards. So
no. But well, I guess we've done it before. When we think of what our record's going to look like next year, I think we're not going to. It might be a little while before we have the defense that have come to know and love.
Well, Ryan, I appreciate you calling in, sir.
Thanks, gentlemen. Have a good night.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. All right, let's get to the super chats before we get to our final caller, which is Corey. He says, SB says, not sure I get the portal hype. Is landing a portal QB drive Sullivan to the portal? I think Sullivan has upside for what Lester wants to do with RPO and play action. I agree with that.
I agree too.
Totally. Although I've never been an advocate for you don't go to the portal because you don't want to drive guys off. Like what I said earlier about going to the portal for a 1-year guy and potentially driving someone off, that I'm a little bit more uneasy about. But if you're getting a guy that you think has a future for 2 to 3 years, I'm not thinking about a guy like Linez being upset. If Linez doesn't want to compete, then Linez can leave. And if Sullivan doesn't want to compete, then Sullivan can leave. The bottom line is that they have somebody that's got 2 to 3 years that they think has a better future. Obviously, things can change. Somebody could be here for a year and then leave after year 1. But if they think that the guy that has 2 to 3 years has a better future than Sullivan has in 1 year, then let the chips fall where they may. But I agree. I think Sullivan should be the guy. I anticipate him being the guy next year, and I love his upside, his athleticism, his legs, and give him some more time with Lester in the offseason. Bob, talking about the Hawkeye women, we've not talked about Jan's team. They'll play Tennessee out in the Barclays Center in Brooklyn this Saturday. Nolan says Tyler Barnes said today that Lester won't be out this spring to recruit because he'll stay back to really develop the offense and QB spot. How do you feel about this? I personally like it. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just not a recruiting expert. I don't know what impact that has, if any, but I do know that Iowa has several guys who have done really well recruiting a number of different places. Liddell down in this great state of Florida. You've had Seth Wallace, who's really been an integral part of bringing a lot of kids in. We had talked to one of them earlier, and Brad Fitzgibbon. Kelvin Bell's an excellent recruiter. So they've got really good recruiters. Now, do I think there's benefits and positives in having your OC recruit? Yes. Do I think if they're in on a big quarterback in the portal that he'll visit them? Yes. I don't think that's a hard line in the sand that I was drawing. So balance. I think there'll be some balance there, but yes, they can't work with these kids year round. Let's also remember that there are periods of time where they're able to work with their players, and there's periods of off time as well. Erica, Kyle is right. Would consider stopping my donations to the Swarm if the QB next year doesn't work out. Tacoon says Rusty Feth. Yes, he'd be the last good example of offensive lineman they brought in that was decent. He wasn't.
Dejon Parker was the Virginia guy you were thinking of that didn't pan out.
Great kid, didn't pan out. Coy Cronk, great kid, didn't pan out. Rusty Feth, great kid, panned out to an extent, but was not some All-American. He was a good player that had connections to George Barnett and filled a need here. Joey says, will Cody Fox be ready for duty on the O-line next year? Year 2 for Cody? Who knows, man? I mean, there's 4-star guys that have come and gone from Iowa and have never seen the field. It's so hard to predict. It's kind of like centers, at least for me, it's kind of like projecting big men. Riley Mulvey enrolled a year early, and here he's about to graduate and, really isn't seeing any significant time. Didn't see the floor last night against Northwestern. Maybe it's not totally apples to apples there, but I have a hard time. I really have to ask. I always send tape to Coach Patterson whenever there's an offensive lineman that commits, and I say, hey, Coach, tell me what you think of this guy's feet.
Yeah.
Can he fill into this frame? And because I'm no O-line expert, so
you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. Did we sign any 3 to 4-star skill position players? Yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen for everybody. I shared this earlier, but here is Iowa's 2025 class as it currently stands. They could always add somebody late. An example of that, Deshaun Lee. A couple of years ago, they added in February, and he's ended up being a guy that's played a lot at corner. But of course, this class starts with the prodigy, Yosei Epinesa, who's a 4-star out of Edwardsville, the hometown of, his 2 older brothers, Eric Epinesa and AJ Epinesa, along with former Hawkeye women's basketball star Kate Martin. And he's the son of former Hawkeye Epi Epinesa. Bert Goucher also is a linebacker out of Sycamore, Illinois, who he reminds me a lot of Preston Reese. He reminds me a lot of Preston Reese, who we've not seen yet. He was part of the 2024 class, but On3 likes him. He's considered 18th best linebacker nationally, 6th overall player in the state of Illinois. Everybody knows about Clear Lake prospect Thomas Meyer. I kind of compared him earlier to Gavin Hoffman a year ago. 4-star kid, has all the features you want physically at 6'5", 210, coming out of high school. Now, the one thing I don't know with a number of these athletes is I'm kind of running through these. The recruiting guys, the guys like Elliot Clough and Blair Sanderson and those guys who work hard on the other networks, they're locked into who's enrolling early, who's not. I didn't ask Brad if he's enrolling early. I suppose I could shoot him a text and ask him. But usually you get 2 to 3 guys who enroll early. Maybe a couple more in this class. That's possible.
I thought I saw something earlier today. I have to go back and see the interview. There were like 5 or 6 players were early enrolling. It seemed like it was more than higher percentage than usual.
I think that's all positive. You can get it. Carson Cooney, another talented linebacker from Oswego. He's also the son of a head coach at his high school. Terrence Smith was a late add at receiver, but a kid they really wanted. They stole him from the likes of Minnesota and Iowa State, schools that have produced really good wideouts. He's got size, a great frame at 6'4", 185, and they bring him in from North Aurora. Lucas Allgaier, another legacy guy. His dad was also, I believe, an offensive lineman at Iowa. Don't think he played a ton. Now, Lucas has got good size. I wonder, when you watch his tape, I don't know about his feet. I remember asking Coach Patterson about Lucas Allgaier, and I'm reading between the lines of what Coach Patterson said. I wasn't blown away with what Coach said about Lucas. Now, On3, I don't think is as high on Lucas as some of the other networks. Let's see if
247 is him as the 75th ranked at his position, 13th in the state.
Okay, On3 is actually higher. They've got him at number 36 overall, offensive tackle. Let's get rid of this banner so we can hopefully people can see this a little bit better if I change the layout a bit. Okay, here we go. Joey Van Wetzinga, another son of a coach. His older brother Rusty is a fullback at Iowa right now, and Joey comes in as a potential interior guy up front on the offensive line, and he'll have some room to grow. Not real big at 6'2", 250, but very well coached from Pleasant Valley, and that's a school that's got some really good, solid, small-town football, college football roots. We talked with Brad Fitzgibbon earlier out of Marist, which is also a high school of John Nestor. Those two played together. Mason Woods, the son of LeVar Woods. He's a guy who can play a variety of positions. Is projected, I think, as a tight end. Now he's only 6'1", 190 right now. At least that's what he's listed at on 3. I don't know what Iowa published him at earlier today. But I think if anything, getting Mason Woods when they got him was at least some level of assurance or reassurance that maybe they can hold on to LeVar Woods through the length of Kirk's tenure, hopefully. Eli Johnson, kind of compared him to Michael Burt. Under the radar, kind of overshadowed by the son of LeVar. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Thomas Meyer. But Eli's got a good frame at 6'5", 220. Need to put on some weight. But underrated prospect out of Wisconsin, River Falls. Alante Dean was a late add today. Armwood High School, which is where Rashad Godfrey played last year. So those two were teammates. Plant City, Sefner area, I believe along the Gulf side. I don't think that's real far from Tampa. CJ Bell, he was a kid who was wanted by a lot of schools. I'm going to pull this up on my screen. You might not be able to see it, but he was a kid who had an offer from Notre Dame, had an offer from Penn State, offers from Tennessee, Wisconsin, NC State, Maryland, had interest from the likes of LSU, Georgia Tech, Pitt, had an offer from Rutgers. So BC was in on him, UConn. So he was a highly touted DB. And of course, a guy that Phil Parker was high on, and Kelvin Bell was actually his primary recruiter. Nathan McNeil, another Liddell Betts kid out of Florida, Tampa. Wiregrass Ranch, don't know a lot about that high school, that program. He's a kid that we hope to get on this show, but pretty good size as a young kid who's coming in and will gain some weight. He's already listed at 5'11", 195. Now, keep in mind, there's opportunity at running back next year, and it's a position that historically is easier to play at a young age than some of the other skill position spots, but he's going into a room that's still pretty full with Jazz Patterson, Kamari Moulton. We'll see how much Terrell Washington works out at running back. And then a couple of really high upside kids, I think, with Brevendal's speed and Xavier Williams, his tree trunk legs. He's hard to bring down. He's a big dude with a great center of gravity. And so they'll add Nate McNeil. And then, of course, the quarterback out of Carroll, Fort Wayne, Indiana, that's Jimmy Sullivan, who is a dual threat kid. Drew McPherson from Loyola Academy, who's teammates with one of Iowa's walk-ons, which is the Fitzgerald kid, whose name escapes me at this moment. Help me out on this, Kyle. Pat Fitzgerald's son's name, I should know that.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Walk on. We'll come back to that. Somebody will tell me in the chat.
Chad will get it in 5 seconds.
Yeah, that's kind of my rundown of the class. Anybody on that list that stands out to you or you think could have, I don't know how much tape you've been able to consume, Kyle, but there's obviously a couple of positions where they could use some production earlier. Thank you, Isaac. Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, really excited about Thomas Meyer, like everybody else is. I just, again, we're kind of processing this as we're having this conversation. Like, one offensive lineman in a class is the only thing that scares me a little bit, because I mean, we're talking here like how many offensive linemen they have had that have been transfers that have panned out, and it's not many. I mean, if you're going to have one in a class and you need a room of, I don't know, 8 to 10. I mean, Kirk always says he likes to have 8.
You keep saying one offensive lineman. Where are you getting that number? Because
I'm just looking at 24.
Joey Van Wetzing is projected to play offensive line. Lucas Allgaier is projected to play offensive line.
No, I didn't know that.
Missing on that list. Is there somebody else that I'm missing? Those are the two guys. I mean, I think both of those guys are definitely going to play on the offensive side of the ball.
Okay. All right. I'm just going off what I have in front of me here.
20. I mean, keep in mind last year they added, Will Nolan, Cody Fox, Bodie McCaslin, Josh Janowski. There's 4 guys. And am I missing one other guy on that list? Maybe I'm not. So they'll probably go. I think you're Cade Board, the kid they added from North Dakota. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, they'll probably go to the portal. I think you're probably right. They'll probably go to the portal for at least one guy there. They got a lot of guys who have just been sitting, kind of like linebacker. They got a lot of guys who have just been sitting and waiting their turn. Jack Dotzler, Michael Mislinski. Tyler Ellsbury is a senior. I think his eligibility's up. Now they'll get Jennings Dunker back. they will get. Who else am I missing that they'll get back? Bo Stevens, I think, is expected to be back.
Yeah.
So there's 2 starters right there. Basically, the 3 guys that they're definitely losing: Logan Jones, Connor Colby, Mason Richmond.
Yeah.
And they need a guy like Josh Janowski to really take a step forward. They need a guy like Trevor Lauk from Indiana, who came in as a 4-star here. What was that? 2 seasons ago? Last season, 2 seasons ago. They need him to really latch on. If they could get Cale Crow to really grow, I think he's heading into his senior year. Kid from Ballard, just south of me here in Ames.
Cale's going into his junior year. He's got a couple of years left.
Well, I think he redshirted, so assuming he sticks around for 5 years now with roster requirements, you wonder, is a kid who's not giving you production going to be able to be on the roster for 5 years now?
Yeah, I know. Those are big questions. I mean, beyond just the walk-on culture, which is obviously a big thing, like that, the redshirt question to me is the more intriguing one, because with the walk-ons, Iowa's got walk-on contributors. Most programs can't say that across the board, across team after team after team. But basically every team can say we've got, 5, 6, 7 contributors that redshirted and stayed on the roster that extra year. And with 125 players, it's not a big deal. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how Kirk handles that, and if he's more judicious about giving out red shirts moving forward.
Cade Pieper's another one. And they obviously liked him. They added him. He was undersized. I think he was pretty late in the process as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And they obviously like him. So you never know where these guys are going to come from. I mean, sometimes it seems like at offensive line, it's the 4-stars that don't end up working out.
That's how it's been recently.
And it's the 5-stars that you think you're going to get, and then they leave. Caden Proctor and what's the kid that Pierce Bach years ago?
Don't go down that rabbit hole.
Alabama, Nick Brooks, who's going to Texas. Just go down the list. It's all these high 4 or 5-star kids. Anyways, Bob says, does anybody actually think Miller Moss would come to Iowa? I've not talked to the kid, but I'm just telling you what the tweet was from Pete Nakos of On3. And I'll read you the tweet just so everybody is aware of what we're talking about if you're not on social media. So the tweet that got everybody going here a couple days ago, let's see here. So I said a week ago, it was really only like 3 days ago. USC quarterback Miller Moss is expected to look at Michigan, Auburn, Iowa, and Louisville once he enters the NCAA transfer portal. Okay, so that's the initial tweet. I'll pop this up on the screen so everybody can see what I'm talking about. So Miller Moss was the starter for most of this year at USC. Had a conversation with Mark Rogers the other day about Miller. He is not as mobile as I would prefer, but he's also a kid who has got good experience, has got a good arm, decent feet. So here's just so people can see the exact language of what was said by Pete Nakos of On3. Throw this up on the screen. So this is what he said here, or what On3 said, and apparently I'm not a premium subscriber to On3's national board, but Miller Moss is expected to look at those 4 schools. Now, if you look at what was said about Connor Weigman, is this 2 ends or 1? Connor, I think it's 2 ends. Here's the difference in language. So one says he's expected to look at those 4 schools. The other, let's see if I can find this other tweet. Maybe am I spelling his name wrong? Connor, I think I am. I think it's an E. Connor Weigman.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what On3 tweeted about Connor Weigman, who's the former 5-star who's been at A&M. Syracuse, Missouri, Iowa, Louisville, Wisconsin are 5 teams to watch. You see the difference in language there?
Yeah.
The way I look into this, and I've not published any formal content on this yet, but this sounds like Pete Nakos is just speculating that these 5 schools could be involved, whereas he has reason to
with Miller. Yeah, it sounds a lot more. A lot more sure about exactly. Miller. Yeah.
So that's why I tweeted what I tweeted earlier. There's a connection somehow that Pete Nakos has drawn between Weigman and Iowa, but it sounds like there's more than just a random conclusion that some national media guy has drawn, like maybe it has been the case with Weigman.
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully we answered that question earlier. Guys like McNeil, who's a 3-star. receiver Terrence Smith. So hopefully that answered the question here in the chat. Doug says, my question is, would anybody sign Mr. Glass? He's talking about Cade McNamara. Somebody will take him. I think somebody will take him at the G5 level, Kyle. I think if they have reason to believe he's healthy, he'll go somewhere. He ain't gonna make money.
I dropped my crystal ball earlier to you in our DMs.
You said Kirkwood?
Iowa Lakes Community College.
Iowa Lakes. All right. They offered me, and I turned down their offer years ago.
Dang.
BJ says, has any NIL quarterback not transferred before NIL been a program changer yet? Asking because I can't think of any at the top of my head. Plenty of guys. Are we talking about nationally?
Nationally, there's dozens of them. At Iowa, there's been none. But Dylan Gabriel off the top of my head this year. My goodness, Big Ten Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year.
So let's just look at the 2024 transfer portal cycle. Let me pull this up here. This show is going longer than I expected, or I wanted, Kyle. We still haven't gotten to Corey, and some people say Corey, the other Corey, is a little long-winded. Is that true, Corey? Are you long-winded?
I was just about to say, we're just getting started.
All right, we're not ready for you yet, Corey. We're going to bring Corey back in a second.
Long-winded in defense of Kirk Ferentz.
All right, let's go to let's look at the trend. I'm going to go ahead and share this. So just put this in perspective. Here are some of the guys just in last cycle, the last 2024 cycle, who went on to play significant college football at their respective schools. Now, you can say what you want about Aiden Childs. He made Iowa's defense look silly this year. He transferred with Jonathan Smith from OSU to Oregon State to Michigan State. Cam Ward,
yeah.
He's
been contender all year.
He goes from Incarnate Word to Wazoo to Miami, Florida. And by the way, he got a bag going to Miami, Florida.
Sure did.
He's had an excellent year. Will Howard, say what you want about him. He's been the starting quarterback at OSU following his time at K-State. Riley Leonard, Notre Dame, great example. Dylan Gabriel, he jumps from UCF to
DJ Uiagalelei.
Uiagalelei, yeah. How about Kyle McCord? That dude.
He lit it on fire. Led the NCAA in passing yards, as a matter of fact.
He has been a dog at Syracuse. My goodness. Will Rogers goes from Mississippi State to Washington. Now, Washington hasn't had a great year. We didn't expect them to, but he's been really good. Is that a picture of Tyler Van Dyke? Why does he look like a third-grade PE teacher? Holy crap. Is that really him? Wow. That cannot be him. Somebody give me a zoomed-in image of this. That's incredible. Can I what is going on?
I think third-grade PE teacher. Maybe insurance agent.
Why am I not able to make this big? Maybe it's for the best. Wow. Okay. I'm sorry to get distracted, but man alive.
Somebody tweet Tyler Van Dyke and tell him we're laughing at this picture at 10 o'clock on the live stream.
All right. So this is just last year. This literally is just last year. All these guys running through that have been significant production guys at their
Ward McCord and Dylan Gabriel might be three of the five best quarterbacks in college football, right?
What about this guy right here, Curtis Rourke?
Yeah.
Who's went from Ohio to Indiana, and they're about to play in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could go, and I was just looking at 2023 when I first saw that comment in the chat, and maybe not as many in 2023. Sam Hartman would be one. Hudson Card transferred to Purdue from Texas.
Tanner Mordecai.
Yeah, Mordecai. I mean, he didn't
Luke
have
Altmaier. Yeah.
Myers ended up having a nice career. Graham Mertz had a phenomenal time at Florida. I mean, his production
Jeff Sims, great Nebraska quarterback.
Oh my goodness, Keaton Slovis, what a weird story.
Is that Shadur Sanders you just skipped over up there?
Yeah, that's that's Spencer Sanders. Shadur's on here somewhere. Where's Shadur?
Yeah, Shadur will be here.
He's here somewhere. Hank Bachmeier, Jake. Okay, we don't have to keep going through all these players. Isn't it kind of fun to go through all these guys and be like, wow, I know a lot of college football players that is real meaningless information in my brain. So anyways, B. Blair says, any thoughts on the bowl game? Tampa, please. I'm hoping it's Tampa, personally. Recruiting in Florida needs to continue. They've had success down there, and my guess is they'll continue to have success there as long as Liddell Betts is on the staff. Who does Corey dislike more, Cade or Gabby Marshall? Are you kidding me? I have so much.
Guys, Corey is the president of the Gabby Marshall fan club.
I think the world of Gabby
He
Marshall.
adores Gabby Marshall.
If you
I don't know where this comes from.
Compared Gabby Marshall to Spencer Petras or Cade McNamara, I mean, I wouldn't even know how to respond to that. So no, I have a lot of adoration for the career of Gabby Marshall. Absolutely. So
I'm glad to hear it.
If Cade is a jerk, I didn't call him a jerk. I said he comes across as a jerk. But she says if Cade is a jerk, then why was he captain many weeks in a row? I don't know.
I'd go through college football's list of captains, go through all the teams, and tell me how many teams don't nominate their quarterback as a captain.
And I also don't know that what we're saying has any impact on how the players viewed him at the time. I think there were probably plenty of players that respected Cade, respected what he had done at Michigan, respected his confidence and all of that.
Yes, as a teammate, I'm sure there's a lot of teammates that look at his confidence. When we look at his confidence, we go, and they look at his confidence and go, yeah, that's a guy that I want to go to war with. That's 100% a thing.
Steve Peterson, I'd love to know more about Pat Fitzgerald's QB, or his kid. Is he a legit quarterback? Video coming on that, Steve. I have studied his tape, but it's been a while, and I don't believe I published content on Ryan Fitzpatrick. Is it Ryan Fitzpatrick? Why does that? Why do we keep saying Ryan? Somebody in the chat said that just to mess with me. Ryan Fitzpatrick is the long-bearded guy that always wore the chain, that played forever in the NFL.
I don't know that was it. I think he got baited by the comments there. Maybe
by the comments, didn't I? It's just like when I answered the phone line 2 years ago, and all of a sudden
Jack Fitzgerald, or no, never mind. He committed to Northwestern. No, it's let me see.
Oh, it is Ryan Fitzgerald.
It is Ryan Fitzgerald.
It is Ryan Fitzgerald.
Okay, Ryan Fitzgerald. There you go.
Kathy says this show is such a downer. She is signing off.
Bye.
Why is this why did this get starred? Did you star this, Kyle? I don't need to
yeah, of course I did. I started the Gabby Marshall one too.
Great. Fantastic. Kathy, I'm sorry you feel that way. I try to tell it like it is. I don't know about Kyle, but I try to tell it like it is. And I
try to tell you what Corey isn't saying but wants to say.
Yeah. Great. All right, let's go to our final comment in the chat, and then we'll go to Corey and see how he can finish our show off on the right note. Corey/Kyle, what position is most important in the portal after quarterback? Well, Kyle already answered this. He thinks offensive line may be of even more importance. I think wide receiver I think quarterback, receiver are still 1A and 1 and 2. I think quarterback is still.
If they lose Graves, do you want them to go after D-line as well? Because that's a thought that I kind of had. If they lost Aaron Graves, just going both trenches would be a good thing.
It would all just depend on how many. I would need to know how many actual spots will you have available. Like how, because I like the young guys they have along the defensive line: Chima Chineke, Joseph Anderson, Devin Kennedy. How about Jack Campbell's younger brother, Drew? They got some guys who I think have great futures. How fast can they mature and be ready? Brian Allen Jr. is going to be coming off of surgery. Hopefully he's good to go in the spring. That will be big to see how he can, because he's going to be a starter next year. I think Max Llewellyn has the opportunity to be the next great pass rusher at Iowa. You pair him, Brian Allen together, Aaron Graves if he's back, and then who else plays on the interior? Jeremiah Pittman, does he have 1 year left?
Yeah.
He's a low floor, low ceiling guy. He's going to be a space filler. And to some extent, that's what Y.A. Black was too. But Y.A. Black was just physically ridiculous.
Jeremiah has 1 more year left.
So give me run through you got the roster up there. Run through the defensive line room. Who am I missing that I should?
I'm just going to rattle off the returners, and you can note who you think gets in the rotation. Jeremiah Pittman, Kenneth Merriweather, Max Llewellyn, Ryan Kunin, Devon Kennedy, Ethan Herkett's gone, Will Hubert, Aaron Graves, don't know, Luke Gaffney, Caden Crawford, Deontay Craig's gone, Chase Brackney.
So let me pause you right there. A couple of comments. Caden, it'd be great to see Caden Crawford make some headway because he's going into, I think, year 3, correct?
Yep.
So it'd be nice to see him take a step. I think he has taken some steps, reading between the lines of what some of the coaches have said and watching him in some of the practices that have been available to the media and to the public. So maybe he takes a step. I think the bigger question has to be on the inside, because Kenneth is a guy who's going to be an edge rusher.
Yeah.
Brian Allen, I think, is more of a natural edge rusher. Same thing with Caden Crawford once he's healthy. Chase Brackney's a guy who I think is more of an interior dude. Where is his maturation? I have no idea.
So he's 4.291 as a freshman.
Yeah, and he missed some time. If I'm not mistaken, he may have been – it was either during the spring or during the open practice. I don't think he was like the one scholarship player who was not there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Everybody else was healthy besides him.
Yeah, so I don't know. Keep going.
Let's see. Where did I get to Jeff Bowie yet?
He's gone. Remember, he's entered the transfer portal already.
Yep, he's gone. Drew Campbell, Joseph Anderson, Brian Allen, mentioned him. Trying to see if there's anybody else. That's about it. Maddox Borshing Johnson.
Yeah. So it's really, you know what it comes down to? Unless it's a guy who was a true freshman this year, namely Kennedy, Anderson, Chima, you got to figure out like which of the guys that have been there for a couple of years are going to take a step forward. Maddox, Brackney, who am I missing? There was one other guy that you named. Crawford. I guess Crawford I throw into the mix, but he's more of an edge guy. So
yeah,
I don't know. I really don't know. I've asked Kelvin Bell specifically about Maddox. I've asked Jay Neiman about Maddox, and I don't know where his development is. So he may be in a very, very important place. Like this next spring may be like his most important spring of his career. Because if it doesn't click this next spring, and if it doesn't click for Chase Brackney this next spring, will it? Because then if it clicks the following spring, is that too late? For a position where there's probably some opportunity. I think they probably will go to the portal and get somebody probably along the interior. It could, if you look at history, they've gone to Division II with a guy like Van Volken.
And that's a position too where with their ability to scout talent, like with D line, I don't view it as something where like with a lot of these offensive linemen, you want to get a big time player that's going to come in and start. And at quarterback, obviously you got to throw tons of money at them. But a lot of those D2 guys, they're really good at scouting them, and it's not something you're going to have to throw $250,000. I don't even know what's considered a lot of money to come out of the NIL fund, but you're not going to have to throw 6 figures, 7 figures at those guys versus some of the other positions.
Man, Tyler Van Dyke. I had that picture still up on. I'm not ripping on. I just he looks like he's 40.
What about linebacker? Let's throw that one in the mix too.
Linebacker? I think they're in a great place at
You
linebacker.
think they're good at linebacker? Okay.
I think so because I expect Jaden Harrell to start. I expect Carson Fryer to start, assuming Carson is healthy.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't see a ton of Kyler Fisher this year, so we're going to see a lot of 2 linebacker formations. And I also think, Cash is probably maybe the bigger one to ask who replaces Castro, because I really don't have no idea who's going to be that guy. Is it a guy like Khalil Tate? Is it one of the corners? I don't think Jalen Watson's probably going to be a Cash. I don't know that he's big enough to be a Cash guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Zach Tweet has been in the program several years. I think he's got 1 year left.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, who else am I missing at linebacker? Obviously, the young guys they brought in last year, Preston Reese. They brought in. I'm sorry. Let's see, who's the kid they brought in? They brought in 3 guys last year. Reese and who am I missing? Weisskopf.
Weisskopf. Yeah, Weisskopf. Yeah.
Yeah, you have the roster in front of you. I don't.
Well, the roster also has 125 players on it that I'm going up and down.
You can separate it by position.
I've got them. They got 15 linebackers.
Yeah.
And like 20 people on the defensive and offensive lines.
Well, I think they're going to be fine there. And obviously, you got a lot of confidence in I have confidence in Kelvin Bell too, but Seth Wallace has done such a good job keeping that room full.
This is my feeling about it. It's the defense is a question mark, and they're going to have a lot of guys that need to step up. I feel good that they'll have a lot of guys that step up. I just don't know, like, you feel like with that number of people leaving and the number of people that are going to need to step up, there'll be a hole somewhere. It's just hard to kind of project where that is, I guess.
And this year we thought all this experience would really make them better.
Exactly. You have no
not.
clue.
So maybe next year the expectation's lower and it's actually better that Iowa's bringing more guys back on offense and they can plug a couple of holes on defense, and maybe they're, they got guys who are just ready to go. And I mean, if they could be elite on the back end, that would be great. Like if Cohen and Tringer, Xavier Wampa, and whoever plays corner, if those guys could be elite and take some pressure off, the front seven, positive. Let's go to our final caller of the night. We got Corey. Corey, welcome. How's our analysis been tonight, Corey? Has it been okay?
It's been a bit harsh. Been a bit
It's been harsh.
Hateful even.
Hateful.
Hateful. Corey doesn't hate anybody. Corey really wants everybody to know he doesn't hate anybody.
I was about ready to leave with what was her name? Kathy? I think.
Kathy's gone. Kathy's been gone for 20
She's
30
long gone.
And if she's still here, hi Kathy.
I would like to know when Kathy made that comment. What was said that made her think how negative?
I think it was the middle of the Cade talk about 45 minutes ago.
Okay.
And that's where I want to pick up.
We haven't done it enough. Let's do it.
So, if you recall, first off, as a card-carrying swarm member and an undying, relentless swarm member, I believe in it because it helps us compete or have access to skilled players, and money talks, and it's a way to give us a competitive advantage. So if you recall, ESPN did a story, basically a story on Cade McNamara coming to Iowa. That was the biggest story in the NIL trade world last year for a period of time, was Cade McNamara coming to Iowa. And Iowa was able to achieve that through the Swarm Collective, the NIL run by Brad Heinrichs, who does one whale of a job and gets the biggest bang for the buck. And as a fellow golfer, Kyle, I think that you should agree and share the love that Brad Heinrichs is a valuable piece to the puzzle.
I'd love to play around with Brad.
Well, he's down in Florida, so he's still playing. You're up here freezing. He's down there playing. Now, if we go to the bowl game, then we'll be in his backyard. If we go to Tampa, that is.
Yeah.
Are you going to go if they go to Tampa? Are you going to go, Corey?
Yes, myself and my two boys will be there at the ReliaQuest Bowl. And I won't be doom and gloom if we play Ole Miss that beat Georgia by 21 points or whatever, and beat, all these things, and the argument that they should be in the playoff instead of Bama, which is a sound argument. All the comparables show that, but I'm getting off track here. Let's just no one could foresee what happened with Cade McNamara. Okay. But Iowa was able to do what was perceived as something great by the entire country by obtaining Cade McNamara. When
great is an overstatement.
Well,
it was great for Iowa, but Corey, Mark, you watch Mark's show. Mark said it from day one. He was not even a top 5 quarterback in that transfer portal cycle. Not even close. He probably wasn't even top 10. At the end of the cycle, he wasn't. At the time, it was big for Iowa.
That was where the big news was, because he committed so early in the window.
And you're right. It was early, but it was the story early for sure.
And also, by the way, because he brought Eric All with him, by the way.
Yeah. And
but it was what we did view it as it was something that Iowa needed. I mean, I said it. I thought he was the perfect guy for Iowa's needs under Brian. I thought I wanted somebody that had been developed, that Brian didn't need to worry about. They knew what he was doing, Now I take a totally different approach to it because I got a guy who understands the position in Tim. So that's kind of where I stand on it now.
Yeah, and but what I'm saying is the swarm is an effective tool. It is the swarm collective did not fail Iowa. Okay, you can say that we made a bad choice. You can say that there was just a bad luck strike of injuries, which is my take on it. You can't demonize the swarm or say, I'm going to quit the swarm. And this isn't a direct attack on Erica. I know she made the statement about that. But my position is, as long as Kirk Ferentz is coach, I will continue to be a swarm member because I believe in that guy. I believe in someone that produces 9.1 wins a year for the last decade. 9.1 wins with the history of Iowa football. It's the best in the history of Iowa football. Okay, there's 5 teams in the country that have won at least 8 games for the last decade, and Iowa's one of them. So I I think that we need to appreciate and be, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, have a little bit of Thanksgiving, have a little bit of counting our blessings that, you know, I look at this fan base and then I wanted to just kind of compare. So I jumped on a Pittsburgh Steeler fan base, a couple podcasts and YouTube channels, and they're very similar. They're tired of the consistency. They're tired of making the playoffs every year, and they want to win it all, And then there's a few diehards like me, and then there's the ones that are, let's fire the head coach and let's move on. We need to try to win the big one. And I guess, my take is this. As a fan, I want to be able to go to Kinnick and I want to see my team, even against a high quality opponent, go in there and be competitive. And I want to be on pins and needles against the big boys, but I want to know that we might slay the dragon tonight in Kinnick. And I've always been able to experience that. Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, okay, when we're talking ranked high, okay, 2021, what was it? 2 versus 3 or 3 versus 4, whatever. It was the best day of my dad's life. He died 2 weeks after that game. He had lung cancer. We climbed to the top of Kinnick. He had 8 energy drinks to make it to the top. 8 5-hour energies. So he was good for 40 hours. But anyway, my point is, as long as we're winning 9.1 games per season on average, as long as I have a chance to go witness a big time win in Kinnick and slay one of the big dogs in Kinnick more times than not, and as long as I can count on a majority of the time going to Kinnick Stadium and we're going to win, it might be close, but we're going to win, then I'm enjoying that season. And I'm grateful for that season. What happens away happens. And yeah, that's where great teams, if you want to win it all, you got to win every game. But my point is, when it comes to the actual true fan experience, what is that? Most fans don't go on the road. Most fans are at Kinnick. Okay. If you're at Kinnick and your team wins most of the games, almost all of them, and then they once every 2 years, and I know it's getting to be once every 3 years now, but it was once every year.
Well, it's been 5 years now since they won the
big one. Wait. 2021.
I'm talking about a team that was a legit team from start to finish. Penn State finished the year 7-6.
Yeah, but I'm talking ranked top 5. We took them down. Spencer Petras, naked boot, off to the right. Nico's dragging across the field like he did the plays before. And the defense knew the play. And he reverses and runs a
You're,
post. And Brian
Corey, you're
Ferentz,
muted. I don't know if you're trying to chime in here.
Corey, real quick. Did we lose Corey? No, he's still there.
No, we didn't.
Corey,
no, I'm here.
real quick. What was I going to say? I don't even know.
I had a comment, Corey.
Go
I
ahead.
hate you, Doug.
Ryan wants to. Corey, Ryan wants to know: did you save Kirk a plate at Thanksgiving?
No, because that would violating the terms of the no contact order.
I make a plate of food for Kirk every Thanksgiving in hopes that he will come. Okay, quick story. My brother. Okay, my brother Brian wrote a letter trashing
Brian
Kirk.
Ferentz?
No.
Different Brian.
My blood brother wrote a letter to Kirk Ferentz bashing him when my brother was a student. And Kirk Ferentz wrote him, and the letter was on his refrigerator the last time I was at my brother's house in Denver, Colorado area. And Kirk hand wrote him. It was more than a full page letter. And it was the season. I'm going to be at a loss. Let's see. Anyway, it was the season before the Big Ten championship. What with Brad Banks?
01 or 2000, maybe.
So my brother's bashing him, and he says, I hope that you keep the faith. We've got, I want to win a championship, Big Ten championship, and we've got things in the works. Nothing's a guarantee, but I ask that you keep the faith, and we sure will appreciate your support. If you're going to be there in Kinnick, we'll be glad to have you, and we look forward to a good season next season. So anyway,
hey, real quick,
we're learning where this loyalty comes from, Corey Brada.
Real quick,
Yeah.
when I was a little kid, we wrote a letter to Kirk, and Kirk hand wrote me a note back, and it meant a lot to me, Corey. Like, just so I grew up a fan. I just want you to. I'm not an enemy of
me
this.
too.
I wrote him a letter. He wrote me a letter back, and it meant a lot to me, and that's why I have a lot of admiration and respect for Kirk Ferentz. I feel like
I thought you were going to say that's why you started the show, right?
every time Corey gets on, he feels the need to defend Kirk Ferentz. You don't need to defend him to me. I have a lot of admiration for Kirk Ferentz.
And it's just like Big E. I don't know if you saw the post on Twitter. Big E, WWE obviously was a Hawkeye football player, didn't have see his success in the professional ranks, but he found himself in the psych ward, and lo and behold, Kirk Ferentz shows up, and he's thinking Kirk Ferentz is a tough, smart, physical football coach. Is he going to judge me? Is he going to look at me with this stigmatic perspective? And no, he was just there, and he was just going to hang with Big E. And hey, I'm here. I want to support you, and I know you're going through a tough stretch here, but I believe in you. And that's Kirk Ferentz. And I think what's lost,
Corey, I just saw something in the chat. I want to comment on this. Corey, Brady, you can say whatever you want about this. At some point in the off season, I'm going to set this up because this would be just too funny not to do. I need myself or Corey center screen. I don't care who. I need Ryan to my left, and I need Corey to my right. And I want Ryan on a couple of beers. I want him to battle it out over Kirk Ferentz. That's what I want. When we're in the dead of winter in February and March and everybody's forgetting about football, that's how we're going to bring Iowa football back to life in the middle of the offseason. I want Ryan on one side and you on the other, Corey.
Okay, so I was raised on tough love, and if I wasn't grateful, then my dad would give me something to cry about. Okay, so if we're gonna
somebody needs to give Corey Brada something to cry about. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is if we're if we're going to cry about 9.1 wins per season, then I think maybe we need someone to give us something to cry about, is what I'm saying here.
Are
No,
you
really.
violence?
No, I think that this fan base has turned into a bit of crybabies because it's like if you give your child an allowance of $100 a week and you do that for 5 years, pretty soon they're like, I'm tired of this. I want 200. We've been giving our kids a good allowance. 9.1 wins is a good number of wins per season for a school with the history of Iowa, the Iowa Hawkeyes. It's very respectable.
The fault in your illustration, though, Corey, is a parent may not have the means to give their child more. But we all know that it is possible for Kirk Ferentz to give the fan base more than that. And
It is possible.
Phil Parker has set up things more often than not to put this program in a position to contend on a championship level. But almost every year, the offense has been so bad that it can't. That's the frustration from the fans. You know this. You're an intelligent person. You realize the frustration. It's not just simply they're 8-4, 9-3 every year. It's how they get there. It's how unbalanced and extreme they are, with defense being amazing and offense being horrible. Defense and special teams being amazing and offense being horrible. That's been the frustration up until this year.
Yes, I see that argument. I'm not blind, but I see a little bit of it's like when the parents get divorced and there's the rich stepdad, and there's going to be some kids that go with the rich stepdad because he's cool, he buys shiny new toys, and then there's going to be no, I'm staying with dad.
Uh-oh. We lost Corey. So we were going to have to wrap it up with Corey anyways, because it was getting to be a bit much, because we've ran over 3 hours. Tom,
like 10 minutes were over, Kyle.
Tom,
I will stick around for 5 more minutes, and then I'm out.
You said you had 10 minutes, and Corey took up all them damn 10 minutes.
That was Corey's trying to act like that was an accident. Corey was working the scenes here.
I will say people have noted, Tom, that caller Corey has the Guinness Book of World Record for the longest run-on sentence. Now, I don't know if that's true. I've not pulled out a timer, but that has been said.
I can't stand Corey, but if he didn't call in, I'd be pissed. Do you understand?
All right.
It makes your show. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Whatever you say, Tom.
He's the only reason I logged on is because he irritated me, you know.
That's great.
Let you go.
I'm glad you're here.
Well, I just got on, so I missed the whole night.
Were you out in the fields?
I was watching Iowa State and Marquette.
Iowa State won.
Yeah.
Iowa State and Marquette basketball.
They won. Cyclones won, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
For them.
And then I had a phone call and blah, blah, blah. But anyway. Al, you did a really good job last night.
Thank you, sir.
You did.
Try to fill in when I can.
Corey wasn't there. My wife and I watched you, and you did a really good job. So Corey's got a good sidekick. Let me tell you.
It's a fun setup we got going. I'm enjoying the audience and everybody.
Did you get a chance to promote your golf platform, Kyle?
For about 30 seconds at the very end. Yeah,
30 seconds.
30 seconds, about an hour and a half.
Didn't Corey chime in on that? Didn't Corey chime in on that?
Well, I mean, I cleared it with Corey before I did it. I didn't just use his platform.
No,
you mean the other Corey?
Oh, your other Corey.
Oh yeah, that was
Michigan Corey.
It was right around when he called in. Yeah.
Yeah, so he elaborated on his golf game. We had to hear all that BS, right?
Exactly.
You know.
All right.
Take it easy, Corey.
I mean, maybe I got the
Don't worry,
wrong.
I got
Maybe I
three
got the
beers
wrong debate
lined up
setup.
here,
Maybe I
Kyle.
need Tom on one side and Corey on the other.
So the interesting thing, I don't know if you remember about Friday night, but I called in sticking up for Kurt Ferentz after Alex called in, right? And Corey's talking about, well, Cade McNamara and blah, 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 didn't work out. Well, the reason we got him is because nobody else wanted him, Michigan and everybody else, right? So he was a dead duck, and that's why we got him, right? So when you talk about how our organization can't find talent, they just went with the Michigan backup, which wasn't worth a shit either, right?
Tom, this show has went into the dumps. We've lost at least half of our viewers in the last.
You're down to 150 or 140 by now. So
Yeah, we're actually 143. You're right. You exactly are in the
So
range.
we get everybody's leftovers in the transfer portal, right? We get Ohio State's leftover wide receivers that can't make it to practice.
There was one more subject I wanted to hit on, Corey, actually, before we call it a night. What do you make of Caleb Brown getting, as far as I know, no interest so far? Is that odd to you at all?
Well, was he actually in the portal?
I thought he was.
How could he have been in the portal when the window wasn't open? He wasn't a graduate. He announced he was entering the portal, but the portal windows.
Well, then maybe he's okay. Well, then that makes sense. Okay, I'm just saying because I have not seen any interest in him at all.
Yeah,
with LeSean, we saw immediately. That's Kansas.
LeSean had graduated.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Yes.
Well, clears.
All I'm saying is when you go through this transfer portal, we might just end up with everybody that nobody else wants. Right?
There you go, Tom.
The team of castaways.
It's not about.
Tom, thank you for calling in.
Right.
Tom is fired, says Codester 91. Tom is fired.
Coach just thinks you're fired, Tom.
Anyways, all right, Tom. Say hi to the wife.
All right, catch you later.
All right, a final farewell to Corey. Corey, we have to tune off. I know your internet failed you, but I have to tune off. Try being Florida State, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Maryland, Minnesota. What does it say on the right? What does it say on the far right? I can't read the one.
Oh, that was Brian Hill. I thought you were forgetting Brian.
Brian Hill. Who the heck is Brian Hill?
Brian Allen. Brian Allen.
Oh, Brian Allen. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to remind you about Brian Allen that he'll be back.
He's got a surgery, but he's hopefully he'll be healthy by spring. Any final remarks, Corey, before we say goodbye for the night?
Let's not be quitters. Let's not say I'm going to quit the swarm. Let's not say I'm going to quit this. Listen, I'm up here in Michigan, and I'm with all the boo-hooers and all the spoiled brats and all the people that think they're big city and all this. Listen, Iowa is the last hope for the good guys, for the loyalists, for the honorable, the people with the wherewithal, the grit to hang tough. Okay? So Hawkeye Nation, hang tough, because my sorry tail end drives 500 miles to go to the game and 500 miles back. And I'm going to continue to do it because I believe in the state of Iowa. I believe in the people of Iowa. I believe in that university. I believe in that man, Kirk Ferentz. I think he represents.
Corey Braddock.
Corey Braddock. I'm going to tell you right now, it's the best show. It's the best show, hands down. I look at all these other. I've been following Nebraska podcasts. I've been following actually a lot of podcasts in the South, just seeing what's out there. They're garbage. There's no quality content. It's just a bunch of, and I mean, then there's some local stuff here, and it's a bunch of meatheads, or it's a bunch of goons that. No, really.
Don't you dare attack David Eichholt like that, Corey.
I didn't say
no.
He's
no, but
you said a word
no,
about
I'm not talking that. But there's
I will say there is no duo like Corey Brada and Coach Don Patterson that I have seen in any of these podcasts.
Corey is talking not about Iowa media. You're talking about people in your area in Michigan, correct?
I'm talking podcasts
everywhere. Okay.
Throughout.
He thinks you're the best in the game, Corey.
Which
I'd
Corey,
say that
talking to me, or are you talking to the other Corey?
Brad.
I would say, okay, I would say this. Ohio State has got one that's meh. It's they let people call in and then they just quickly discount them and then they give their opinion. It's not the same. And I'll just say this.
Caller Corey wouldn't like to call in and get cut off.
Well, the thing is they're just so full of themselves at Ohio State. The one of their key shows, I think that sucks. So, but anyway, I'll just say the reason that your content is good is you get an expert and you have two people exchanging ideas, not one guy going blah 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 blah. And lastly, you with the fan interaction, but more importantly, you've got the key witness expert, Don Patterson, who has an inside track. When these outsiders, and let's be honest, we're all outsiders, none of us know what it's like to coach D1. And we try to gain perspective and understand because it seems like that just seems crazy what they did. Well, then when you have an inside information, it's not like Don's at every practice, but it's a peek inward and you get to peek in the door and see maybe what's going on. And that coupled with some of your special guests, Corey, whether it's your on three guys or I mean, there's been some, especially in the recruiting era, that stuff's huge. That's invaluable. So like today's show that I watched, that was great. And but anyway, I love the personalities in this fan base. You got the Lomanskis that are the old school fire and brimstone, Hayden Fry all the way, Hawks by a million. You got the Ericas that are the again a Hayden Fry kind of person, but I think she's open to the Tim Lester era. So she's actually positioned quite similar to you, Corey, I think. And then you've got some of these younger, spoiled rotten brat perspectives that I can't identify with. This fire ference crap. I tell you what, I'm 53 and they used to have grudge matches on TV, and I want that show to come back.
Would you fight somebody that said that they
Yes.
wanted
grudge match?
All right.
I would, but only on national TV.
All right. Corey, Kyle and I both have to go, but we love you. We love your calls, your optimism. You're the eternal optimist and a believer in Kirk Ferentz. You are what you appear to be, and I think there's a lot of positive value in that. So thank you for calling in, Corey.
But I'm not an apologist. I'm a Kirk Ferentz supporter.
You are,
and I don't apologize for that. I'm proud of Kirk Ferentz, and I sat up here in Michigan for years. People talking about Ferentz, they would have taken him in a second. Now at 70, maybe not so much, but they all think so highly. They're like, with what he does, with what he's got, can you imagine what he could do here? And so there is that perspective. Okay. So all these bratty fans and hey, Doug and Ryan, you guys are entitled to your opinions, and I'm not saying you're not.
All Ryan says he thinks you like Kirk Ferentz. So
Now,
He says
now
40 minutes later, that is my takeaway.
in
Corey?
private, based on the response that I saw from Ryan, just to rib him in private, I would accuse him of being a certain way and having a certain prejudging of a certain group of people. I would do that to him just to get his response because I know he's not guilty of this. But in a prior
Are
show,
we?
I really
I
got.
mean, I was talking about a debate earlier. I think we're setting up a gladiators match at this point.
Oh, no! I like you, but see, I like these guys. I love Ryan. I love Erica. I love Tom. I love Doug. Now is Doug the Doug that's on the big basketball supporter?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
no, I love these guys, and I love everybody's perspectives. I just have my own that's different, but that's what's great about this show, and the fact that you bring these people out and you hear their voices, it makes it real, and now we can have these exchanges, and I love it, and it's just and I enjoyed who's our guy that was 14 years old.
Landon. That was Landon.
That was
Well,
fun.
no, I'm
Landon
sorry.
was fun. Or
I
no,
don't know how old Landon is, but Jack called in the other night, and he's about the same age.
Yeah, but these kids, I mean, I'll tell you what, pretty sharp.
Yep.
Half of his living years he's got the seasons down like that. I'm
Yep.
impressed. I've had a couple glasses of wine. I'm not as sharp, so I'm not gonna play
Just
that kid in
sleep
chess.
well tonight, Corey. I'm going to say farewell. Enjoy women's basketball on Saturday, and we will talk to you very soon because we're going to have plenty of football content here over the coming weeks.
And I appreciate it, guys. Great show again, as usual. To the
Thank you.
Lemanskis, to the Ericas, to the Dougs, to the Toms. Love you guys. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. Appreciate it, Corey.
talk to you soon, Corey.
All right. This has been Hawkeye Hangout, our National Signing Day special, where we covered just about everything under the sun. If you're interested
As
in
of right
donating,
now, it's a 200-minute Hawkeye hangout, Corey.
ridiculous. If you're interested in donating to the show, there's a message on the bottom ticker. You can donate via PayPal, Cash App, or Venmo. And if you're interested in sponsoring the show, you can also do that. Just email me, info@from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Info@from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Kyle, appreciate you being here for the last 3+ hours. Say I'm sorry to your wife.
You're all good.
All right, folks, have a great night. We'll talk to you very soon.